street French that I speak.
The youngest is great with languages. She studied languages, and she's exquisite.
I think they keep your brain young.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Well, read.
I'm trying to push off Alzheimer's as far as I can. But the articles on the app, you can get them to read. The computer will read them to you. It's on the shelf and take a nice long article. Take a shot.
Communicates great.
Yeah. I could have it at school, but I never had any use for it.
You'd be surprised.
Did you remember?
A lot.
Sure.
Who took
The computer.
my
I'll give you my. I gotta tell you, I'm the one who put the two of them.
My nephew, French, Spanish, English, and Arabic.
She'll have it for
No. Good, good. That way I feel the same height as who's.
Yes. Well, very few people can be as tall as I am.
Oh my God. My grandfather was born in Palestine. Immigrated to Cuba right after World War I.
Blue and Mike's are open,
That's all.
but they're muted in our end. Don't worry about it.
Everybody hears our cats. All my cousins. So you don't have to touch them here. Salmon Hattery, salmon.
Leave them on?
Stan, salmon.
They're muted in our end because we don't want any
Common as Hennessy.
going out to the door. So once you
And
said, ready to go,
outside
open it up.
Indian,
Right?
Syria. And on my mother's side, from southern Spain. And then, so my mother's parents immigrated, and my mother's mother was born in
I'm not sure.
Cuba, a little town, Llana de Queen.
Test.
And my grandpa was born in southern Spain. And
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Anybody?
He was just in the restroom, I think.
as a child.
He's getting his.
A lot of people there. There you go.
Oh, you got a coffee?
Joe gave me the card.
You have connections.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
These are the best.
Mint me up, man.
These are really, really good. These are from Buc-ee's. You only get them in, the gas station.
Yeah.
I buy like stock. I stock on these whenever.
Did you make it to your beach house? No. No, you didn't make it?
Oh, they got the bike.
Yeah. Stretch me.
Oh, here.
I'm going to go ahead and wait till my phone says 6 o'clock, and we'll go ahead and get started at that point.
Turn mine off. We're getting closer to the wifing hour.
I hear you. All right, let's go ahead and get started, please. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'd like to ask everybody to please silence all their phones and beepers at this time, if anybody has any beepers. Good evening. This board is comprised of 7 members. 4 members of the board shall constitute a quorum, and the affirmative vote of 4 members shall be necessary for the adoption of any motion. If only 4 members of the board are present, an applicant may request and be entitled to a continuance to the next regularly scheduled meeting of the board. If a matter is continued due to a lack of quorum, the chairperson or secretary of the board may set a special meeting to consider such a matter. In the event that 4 votes are not obtained, an applicant, except in the case of a comprehensive plan amendment, may request a continuance or allow the application to proceed to the City Commission without a recommendation. Pursuant to Resolution Number 2021-118, the City of Coral Gables has returned to traditional in-person meetings. However, the Planning and Zoning Board has established the ability for the public to provide comments virtually. For those members of the public who are planning to appear on Zoom and wish to testify, you must be visible to the court reporter to be sworn in. Otherwise, if you speak without being sworn in, your comments may not have evidentiary value. Lobbyist registration. Any person who acts as a lobbyist must register with the city clerk as required pursuant to city code. As chair, I now officially call the meeting of the City of Coral Gables Planning and Zoning Board of October 11, 2023 to order. The time is 6:01. Jill, please call the roll.
Robert Behar.
Here.
Julio Gabriel.
Here.
Kowalski.
Here.
Alex Pardo.
Here.
Javier Salman.
Right, same thing.
Chip Withers.
I'm here.
A.B. Eisenstadt.
Here. Notice regarding ex parte communications. Please be advised that this board is a quasi-judicial board which requires board members to disclose all ex parte communication and site visits. An ex parte communication is defined as any contact, communication, conversation, correspondence, memorandum, or other written or verbal communication that takes place outside a public hearing between a member of the public and a member of a quasi-judicial board regarding matters to be heard by the board. If anyone made any contact with a board member regarding an issue before the board member must state on the record the existence of the ex parte communication and the party who originated the communication. Also, if a board member conducted a site visit specifically related to the case before the board member must also disclose such visit. In either case, the board member must state on the record whether the ex parte communication and/or site visit will affect the board member's ability to impartially consider the evidence to be presented regarding the matter. The board member should also state that his or her decision will be based on substantial competent evidence and testimony presented on the record today. Does any member of the board have such a communication and/or site visit to disclose at this time?
No.
Swearing in. Everyone who speaks this evening must complete the roster on the podium. We ask that you print clearly so the official records of your name and address will be correct. Now, with the exception of attorneys, all persons physically in the City Commission chambers who will speak on the agenda items before us this evening, please rise to be sworn in. Thank you. Zoom platform participants. I will ask any person wishing to speak on tonight's agenda item to please open your chat and send a direct message to Jill Menendez stating you would like to speak before the board and include your full name. Jill will call you when it's your turn. I ask you to be concise for the interest of time. Phone platform participants. After Zoom platform participants are done, I will ask phone participants to comment on tonight's agenda item. I also ask you to be concise for the interest of time. As for tonight, we don't have any approval of minutes. The procedures that we'll use tonight is first the identification of agenda item by Mr. Caller. Then we'll have presentation by the applicant or agent. In some cases, it could be the staff. And then we'll have a presentation by staff. I'll go ahead and I'll open up the floor for public comment, first in chambers, Zoom platform, and then the phone line platform. Then I'll go ahead and close public comment, board discussion, motion, discussion, and a second of a motion if necessary. Then we'll have the board's final comments, and we'll have a vote. Before we go ahead and start tonight, in light of what the City Commission has done in support for the people of Israel, I would like to ask for a moment of silence to show support against the heinous acts that were done by the Hamas terrorists. Thank you. Mr. Caller?
Item E1, a resolution of the City Commission granting conditional use approval pursuant to Zoning Code Article 14 Process Section 14-203, conditional uses for a school on property zoned as Mixed Use 1, MX1, located at 141 Grand Avenue, Coral Gables, Florida, providing for a repeal of provision, severability clause, and providing for an effective date. Item E1, public hearing.
Hi, good evening, board members. Eddie Baker, representing the applicant this evening, Spark Learning. Before you today for a conditional use application for a private school.
Could you please state your address? for the
Sorry,
record?
1450 Brickell Avenue, Miami, Florida, 33131. To establish a private school at 141 Grand Avenue. Joined with all the forces this evening, our civil engineer, traffic engineer, and also applicant's representative to answer any questions you might have once I wrap up with this brief presentation. So the school will be operating under the name Primer Micro Schools. As the name infers, these are micro schools, very small class sizes. This location proposes to have 35 students. It's going to be grades 3rd through 8. The school day will run from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. You'll have an hour drop off in the morning and an hour pickup in the afternoon. With respect to the existing site, it's been operating previously as an architecture firm. It's a 2-story commercial building. There's a mezzanine area that'll be solely used for storage. No students will go up there. All the classroom teaching will happen on the ground floor. In terms of the interior modifications, very limited. Really, the majority of the changes are going to be happening outside of the building. There's a rear parking lot on site that, oh yeah, we've got the presentation queuing up as I speak. So this is the existing building. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. This is on Grand Avenue right here on the bottom. And I'll just, here's the existing parking lot, which I'll talk about the reconfiguration now. And then this is how it stands currently. And this is the proposed modifications, if you can see that all right. I don't know if it's possible to zoom in at all. All right, so the rear parking lot is going to be reconfigured to add a roundabout. As you can imagine, with a new school, there's obviously traffic, parking, safety concerns. So we wanted to really try to mitigate the queuing on Jefferson and Grand Avenue as much as possible. So we configured this roundabout. It'll allow parents to drive in, park into the parking spaces, back out, and go back out north on Jefferson Street, while also having a car being able to queue off Jefferson, but on the site. So that's really the major modification of the site. We'll also be adding a buffer wall in the rear. 6-foot buffer wall is required by the code to separate residential and commercial. We'll also be adding various improvements to the front of the property that were requested by the county. Of course, they were involved with this process. There's already, as you know, Carver Middle and Elementary across the street on the south side of Grand Ave to the southwest. So we're going to be extending the school zone further east on Grand Avenue to account for our school's location. We're also going to be adding a crosswalk from the northeast corner of Grand Ave and Jefferson to the southeast corner. There will also be additions of landscaping, both to the front and the rear of the property, and the swale, and also in and around the roundabout. And then finally, parking and traffic, right? The biggest issue that we were addressing when this application came before DRC and our interactions with Public Works in the county. And we're of the opinion that we came up with a really reasonable and realistic plan to mitigate any of the traffic and queuing issues on Grand Avenue as much as possible. There's going to be 2 off-site parking locations, so we entered into agreements with a property owner directly to the west of our property, just across Jefferson, about 2 properties down, and then also to a property to the east that will be for drop-off and pickup. So throughout the process with the county, obviously safety being the #1 concern, they requested that we utilize the west site solely for employees and staff. So we will be doing that so we can keep the students on the northeast corner of Grand and Jefferson without having to cross any of the thoroughfares. So we'll have drop-off and pickup in the rear, drop-off and pickup on the site to the east. We will also be having a staggered drop-off and pickup window. Parents will be allocated a 10-minute window, both in the morning and afternoon. School will also try to enforce that by, making sure there's no repeat offenders. Maybe a fine for a parent if, they can't stick to their schedule. But at the same time, we're also going to be very cognizant of encouraging carpooling. Hopefully, a lot of these students will be from in and around the school, and we can try to mitigate the number of cars at the site overall. And then finally, as suggested by staff, we're going to be placing a police officer on the northeast corner of Grand Ave to help with crossing Grand Avenue as well as any traffic mitigation. I just wanted to lastly touch on our community outreach. Prior to even submitting the application, we met with the Lola B. Walker Homeowners Association, which is largely in and around the north side of Grand Avenue. We wanted them to know about the project before we put this forth, and we tried to do everything we can to mitigate any traffic concerns they had. Subsequently, we had the required community meeting, had rather good turnout, and an overall consensus of support for the project. Unfortunately, I don't think we have anyone here. Oh, we do have people here in support of it. I also have several emails from neighborhood residents that are in support of the project. So I think we had a very fair and reasonable compromise with the city, with the county, on how we can really mitigate these traffic and safety concerns. So this is the project we bring before you. We would respectfully, of course, request your support for this application. And of course, if I could have a couple minutes for rebuttal if necessary. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mr. Chair, I do have you said how many students?
35, maximum.
Thank you.
So is that any virtual kids, or that's 6 kids a classroom, basically, right? 3, 4, 5, 6 grades, 35 kids.
Oh, you're sorry. Yes. I don't know the exact figures, but Joe Lindsay, the applicant's representative.
How do you make any money?
Yeah, so good question. So it's a couple different things.
Can we get your name and address for the record, please?
Yeah, I'm Joseph Lindsay. My address is 20 Stuyvesant Oval. And so, yeah, we do a couple unique things. We run a school called Primer Micro Schools. And so our entire model is based on these small classroom sizes. And so we do mixed grade classrooms. And so we have K through 2 in one classroom in areas where we have K through 2. And then we have 3rd through 5th in one classroom and 6th through 8 in another. And our belief in our pedagogy is that helps with social development, that helps with kids are able to get more personalized learning that way, because we maintain somewhere around a 15-to-1 teacher to student ratio. And so how we make money, a couple different things, like our main two sources of income are one, like private paying parents from tuition. And then I don't know if you guys are familiar with Step Up for Students and the ESAs. And so we also receive ESA funds for schools. And the two combined allow us to be need blind in our admission process and yields a pretty diverse set of students at the school.
So how do you make certain, some of the kids from the local neighborhood or participate in this great learning experience?
How do we draw them from the community, you're asking?
Yeah, I mean, in the immediate area. I mean, I'm sure there's a need in the immediate area. Are you addressing that at all?
Yeah,
That has
definitely.
nothing to do with the application. I'm just,
Yeah.
from a social perspective, I'm
For
curious
sure.
to know.
So right now we're operating 5 different locations throughout the state. We have locations in Dade County, Broward County, and Duval County. And we have a great marketing team, great like growth team that helps on that side of things. And a lot of the kids that we end up admitting, we have like 2 broad groups. One are kids whose parents are fed up with the public schools.
Okay.
That's less the
It's
case.
a pretty big group, okay.
Yeah. That is, I will say, though, it's less the case in Coral Gables.
Yeah.
The other group is kids who really need individualized learning. And so there's a lot of schools, whether they're public, private, parochial, whatever it is, have had their class sizes really swell over the years, and especially in the last like 5 years in South Florida. And so what we're doing to partially combat that is focusing on individualized learning. Our goal, like as a company, is to help students become independent learners with like a real sense of passion. And so 2 of the things that we do like throughout our school day, one, we make use of virtual teachers as well. And so we have the 2 like teachers who will be on site. They're former teachers, former principals. That's like the kind of profile that we hire for. But then we also, whether you're in Coral Gables, Liberty City, wherever it is, you can get access to the same great math teacher who lives in Colorado, for example, and they can deliver the same level of education to students across that spectrum.
So the teacher's virtual on some of the
teaching.
learning.
Yeah. So
And so once they hit 8th grade, where do they go? They go back into the public schools?
for now.
Would they be ahead of the 8th graders in those public schools?
Yeah, we hope so.
Yeah, well, okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, we started operating in Florida last year. So we haven't had any like full longitudinal kind of studies done yet in terms of like the effect of our curriculum. But I mean, just like personally, I'm like most enheartened by families and parents who say things like, my child like comes home happy from school now, and like my child like didn't have a chance and like wasn't enjoying it before. And our focus on like personalized learning in particular has really resonated.
If I may piggyback off of what Chip said. I was my interest was piqued when it said economic development and educational access for residents in the area, okay? So are you going to weight the enrollment towards neighborhood kids? How are you going to exactly get neighborhood kids at the school?
I mean, yeah, so part of like just in terms of the enrollment process and like the, like our kind of sales process, commuting time is a big factor. It's one of our like biggest factors for parents deciding where they're sending kids. Again, we have like a couple different locations around South Florida. And so on average, our parents are driving somewhere between like 15 minutes or somewhere around like 15 minutes. And so we do community outreach. We do like events like in the area. We really try to like make it like a local feel school. But we also don't like restrict admission in any way to like within a 15-minute radius or anything like that.
So for example, with the Lola B. Walker community, are you going to be having like an event to attract parents to encourage them to apply? I mean, how is that outreach actually going to happen? I think Mr. Prime is here, right? Mr. Prime is here from.
Yeah. That's
So are you going to join with that community group and encourage those parents in the neighborhood? By the way, that would help with your traffic problem, right?
Yeah,
If you
yeah.
have kids walking to school.
Yeah.
Are you going to actually have a community event where you're encouraging those parents to apply to your school? And again, are you going to weight the number of enrollees to the neighborhood, or are you going to give preference to people that live out of the neighborhood?
So a couple of questions, a couple of answers. we haven't discussed like a specific event with the homeowners association. But I mean, things like food drives and like things like that we're doing in the neighborhood, just to attract people from the area. And we're not waiting anything in terms of like preferential admission to kids in the area, but just like what we've noticed over the course of doing this for 2 years now in Florida is just kind of naturally that happens. So naturally, parents from the area will gravitate towards like the closest micro school location to them. And so, yeah, I mean, definitely something that we're thinking about in terms of like how to do that more formally. But we haven't done any of that.
Oh, well, I'd encourage you to do that, but one,
So
if I could just,
what I'd like to do is have the city do their presentation
Okay.
also. And then we'll go ahead and, because they haven't done their presentation.
Okay.
And then we'll go ahead and ask the applicant any questions. we
okay,
might have.
thank you.
That way
Thank
we'll
you.
have a better guidance and understanding. Maybe there's something they.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Garcia, City Planner. I have a PowerPoint, please. All right, thank you. So this is the existing building that you can see on the left side of the screen. It's an existing building. It's 2 stories tall right now. Its current use is an office. So this is right now, as you know, located on Grand across the street from the elementary and middle school on the corner of Grand and Jefferson. This is the area looking down. It's just south of a single-family neighborhood. The current land use is commercial low-rise, and the zoning is mixed-use 1. This is I mentioned the site plan. So as you can see, what we talked about, the driveway is being reconfigured to allow more cars to stack. There's a new crosswalk being proposed or being, I guess, reemphasized on Grand to be able to cross the street where they're going to be using their open space and their, I guess, PE activities and outdoor activities will be across the street. The existing building will be remaining, obviously, and the school entrance will be off of Grand Avenue. So this is the same image you've seen before. The off-site A, which is the location off to the west, will be just for faculty and staff. The school site will allow some pick-up and drop-off activities, and then the parking of pick-up and drop-off will also happen off of off-site B, which is the location to the east. So this has went through DRC back in April of this year. They had a neighborhood meeting back in August of this year, and here we are for planning and zoning, and they'll be scheduled for city commission shortly after. The letters were sent to the property owners within 1,000 feet within the city of Coral Gables and within 500 feet outside the city of Coral Gables as required by code. And this was sent out twice for the neighborhood meeting as well as for the PCB. But for tonight's meeting, the property was posted twice for DRC and PCB, and website posting also twice, and advertised once in the newspaper. So the staff determined that this is consistent, and we recommend approval with conditions. Those conditions are outlined in your staff report, but overall, it's capping the student to be 35 students, no more. Grades between 3 and 8th grade, between the hours of 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., so no evening classes would be allowed currently. Drop-off is between 7 and 8 a.m. and pick-up between 3 and 4 p.m. The on-site is only for drop-off and pickup. There's no parking to be located on site. Off-site B is limited to just pickup and drop-off, and off-site A is limited to faculty and employee parking only. The condition of approval also includes that the applicant pay for a police officer for the first 3 months, and that's basically to allow the caretakers and the parents to get used to the scheduling, because they have very strict scheduling to be able to be in and out of that small location as far as pickup and drop off. And if needed, they can petition the city later on in future years to be able to lower that requirement as staff feels fit. The offsite agreements between the property owners will be renewed as needed, and they'll have to be able to supply an active agreement for the renewal of their CU, which happens every year. And then they'll also reinstall the crosswalk to cross the street across on Grand Avenue. And that's it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, one comment to the board. This is a conditional use, and as a conditional use, it's only permitted in the zoning district after a public hearing, which is what we're having tonight. And the chief concern is the compatibility of the use in the neighborhood. I want to caution the board, I know that the admission criteria is a very well-motivated thinking on the part of the board members, but we really need to focus on the land use and the compatibility and the criteria for the compatibility.
Understood. Thank you for the clarification. Thank you. Let's go ahead first, see if there's any public comment. Is there anybody in chambers that has signed up for public comment?
Yes. Carl Prime. I believe he needs to be sworn in. And so does the following speaker. Sorry, I can't make out the name.
Well, go ahead. Come up, sir. If you could please raise your right hand to be sworn in.
Yes.
If you could please state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Carl Leon Prime, 141 Florida Avenue, Coral Gables.
Thank you, sir.
With this project, the principals here have been in contact. They've explained what they want to do, and pretty much, it's going to go ahead. However, we do have concerns, and that is with the traffic, which is already a zoo. And what we would like to see is if this does go through, we've asked for help in getting extra traffic calming measures in the neighborhood. It's necessary, especially four-way stops in the historic district. It's one of those things where you can add the extra cars, you can make the extra drop-off and whatever, but the congestion is still going to be there. And an extra 30 cars per day is going to cause a problem. There's also a major infrastructure problem along Grand Avenue at around 137 Grand Avenue. There's a drain there that hasn't been draining for the last 40 years. The county has said that, oh, well, we've vacuumed this and whatever else, but it hasn't worked. Anytime there's a major storm or just a 10 minutes worth of rainfall, it's a flood, and traffic has to go around. All in all, we believe that they are acting in good faith and that it may be beneficial for our neighborhood. However, we are a little bit wary. We've been overpromised, underdelivered, and told various things throughout the years. However, we know that progress needs to go on, but we have to also look at what we're leaving for our own legacy. I just recently moved back into my ancestral home, and so I've been a lifelong citizen of Coral Gables. I've seen things come and go. So take that into consideration. One other thing that I would mention is that with their drop-off and pickup, that they have someone there to monitor it. Because if it's open, the parents from Carver, who we have to deal with every day, will just say, oh, it's an open space, we'll just park there anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. If I may ask you just one question, Mr. Prime. When you reference we, are you speaking for the Lolita B. Walker Association?
I'm speaking for myself and as a member and as the president of the Homeowners Association.
Thank you, sir.
I believe it's Aguilar. Is that correct?
Thank you. If you could lower the microphone, thank you. If you'd state your name and address, please, for the record.
Moselle Aguilar, and I live at 221 Florida Avenue.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. I'm just here to confirm also, I concur with Cara in reference to the traffic. We would like to see four-way stop signs put there. Well, I have no problem with the school, and we've stated that in the meeting with the principal. And I think it's a very good idea, and they also have reached out to the community through meetings, through a couple of meetings, to offer the parents in the community the opportunity to register their kids for the school as well. So my main concern is the traffic there, because we are already having a big problem with traffic. And if we could, along with the four-way stop signs, I'd like to ease in there some speed bumps, because we have people flying through the neighborhood from the George Washington Carver School. They're flying through there in speed limits of 40 and 50 miles per hour. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Do we have any more speakers in
No more
chambers?
speakers, no.
Anybody on Zoom or phone? No. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and close it for the public. Chip, since you had started, do you have any?
I'm good with it.
Mr. Chairman, we
Yes.
need, if the counsel for the applicant has any rebuttal, we need to take that at this point and then
Thank you.
close the public hearing.
Do you have any rebuttal, sir?
Thank you. I just wanted to touch on the four-way stop sign. We're, of course, in support of any traffic calming measures that will improve queuing and traffic in and around Jefferson and Grand Avenue. Anything that the applicant can do to facilitate that process, if it's some kind of donation, anything like that, that could pay for the signs if that's an issue or anything like that. Happy to support the city in their efforts.
I have a quick question before. Has anybody met with Public Works? Because those are city roads, they're not DOT roads.
Yeah.
Has anybody met with Public Works to be able to see if there's a possibility to incorporate four-way stop sign or speed humps or whatever?
Well,
Maybe staff could.
yeah, I mean, we met with Public Works throughout the DRC process. I don't know if you want to touch on anything, but we also worked with the county, of course, on the Grand Avenue portion, and they reviewed the whole site plan with respect to calming measures.
But I'm not talking about Grand Avenue, I'm
You're
talking
talking
about
about
the
Florida.
neighborhood that, the two speakers have asked for something traffic calming methods to do.
Yeah, so Public Works did reach out to the county to see what the status is of four-way stop there, adding two stop signs. I think right now they have two stop signs on the north and south side, but not on the east and west. And the county is now reviewing it, so it's in the works,
Okay, thank you.
but on county time.
Thank you, sir. Is there anything further you'd like to say?
No, I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'll go ahead and officially close public comment. Chip, again, were you good?
No, I'm good with it. I'd like to see a little more landscaping on the west side. Maybe that'll keep some cars from parking there.
Where exactly?
On the west side, if I remember the site plan, it was just a green space there.
Yeah, if you don't, could we pull up the PowerPoint again?
It's all right. I mean, you
Well,
can-
we have landscaping that will be on the northwest corner
Right.
of the site. That will be added. There will be bushes and a large tree. There will also be a tree added on the southern, or in the middle of the roundabout as well.
Right.
And I believe to the south of the roundabout, just abutting Jefferson. So you're saying,
on the west side of the building. I don't know how much space is there, but
yeah, it's just a swale that's probably 2 feet wide.
all right.
Yeah.
I support the project.
Thank you. Sue, you want to go ahead and continue?
Yeah, I got a safety and security issue here regarding the 6 ground level entrances. 4 of those entrances are approximately 7 to 10 feet away from a public sidewalk and an additional 3 feet away from the actual street. Okay, Uvalde, Texas, open door, gunman goes in. How are you going to secure these very, very vulnerable entrances on a very, very highly used roadway?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I mean, school safety and security is obviously something that we take like paramount importance. We're planning on blocking all of those. So through a combination of at like a visual level window film, and then at a physical level, like locking those doors and not, teachers will have keys, but we won't be using those for entry or exit. All the entry and exit will have like 2 of the rear doors. Those will be the ones that we use. And so our plan and our hope is that the back lot is the main like means of ingress and egress for any students. And that's also with the addition of both the roundabout and then the additional wall, an area that we feel like we have more control over. And then combined with, it's a valid point like during the day for sure, but pick up and drop off in particular, we'll also have like a police officer on site for those times.
Okay, but that's for traffic enforcement, correct?
It is, yes.
Okay, but during school hour security, you're not having any security on site with this very vulnerable layout?
We're not currently planning on having additional. We have trainings that we run through with our staff. We have trainings that we do with all of our teachers, but we're not planning on having additional security guard there now.
Okay.
I believe there will be security cameras.
Yeah, we do have security cameras throughout. I understand the concern, yeah. We do have security cameras.
It is also a very busy thoroughfare. I understand the concern. I know this is not trying to lessen that valid concern, but, you know, we're not 100 yards set off the street where, you know, there's not visibility. You know, it's a major thoroughfare with tons of vehicular and pedestrian traffic going by on a, you know, minute-by-minute basis.
And therefore, my concern, it is so vulnerable because of all the traffic and all the people 7 feet away from a door.
Yeah, and we've had, I mean, in our time since taking over the lease back in April, we've had issues with homeless people in particular, like in the area. The Coral Gables Police Department has been great working with us. We've developed a relationship with them. I understand the concern. I understand that's not like the permanent solution in the moment that something could happen. But we do have like an established relationship with the police department at this point. They know what we're planning on doing there.
Okay, well, that is my concern, and I'll vote accordingly.
Yeah, there's also, just to point out, there's the tutoring location just on, just north of Merrick Park. That's right on the street. You know, students coming in and out of there on a daily basis.
There's a fence around that school.
No, it's on the sidewalk.
I think, Sue, he's talking about a different location.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
So
but
I'm
that's
just
my
saying there's
concern.
precedent for it in the city that school or locations where students are located on a regular basis are abutting streets and sidewalks.
I understand that, but this is a conditional use you're coming to us before. And while we have the opportunity to opine on this, we need to bring that security issue up, I believe.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Julio?
Yeah, a couple of questions. You're going to have a police or security for the first 3 months?
That's right.
What happens at the end of the 3 months? How is that going to be reviewed to make sure that you don't need to continue with it?
Sure. So the reason for having them there is really to understand the flow of traffic. It's beginning from day one of the school year and continuing 3 months thereafter. The idea is that we'll be able to have a very good view of how traffic flow happens and how people's habits change from year to year. You know, with student count increasing or decreasing at Carver and the same going on at our site, traffic patterns might change. So the thought is to have someone there for that period to really understand what needs to be done for the next 6 months going forward to minimize or change our practices.
How's the decision going to be made?
It's going to be by Public Works, I believe. Is that correct? And the police department, they're going to be working concurrently. Again, as Joe mentioned, throughout this process, we've had a very good working relationship, not just with the Coral Gables Police Department, but also with the City of Miami Police Department. And we're going to continue to have that relationship and deal with any issues that come about as they arise.
How, on the stacking, when you're picking up, is there enough space for cars to stack and not affect the traffic on Grant?
You're saying for the on-site location at the back of the school?
Yeah.
So there's, I believe it's an allocation of 4 cars per every 10 minutes for the on-site location. So that will, in essence, there's 3 parking spaces in the rear and an ADA space, and you're going to have sufficient room for a car to pull off into the roundabout, off of Jefferson, and queue while you have 3 cars hypothetically parked in the 3 parking stalls. So within any given moment, if all 4 cars during that 10-minute period arrive at the same time, we would be able to accommodate them.
And that was, just to add one thing to that, that was a concern that was raised during our, after the DRC meeting, and we widened the width of the proposed semicircle there to accommodate for SUVs and bigger cars.
And I misspoke. The maximum at any given 10-minute window is 3 cars, and that's only 2 instances in the morning and 2 instances in the afternoon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Javier?
Thank you. I got a couple of questions. I'm very familiar with the area. I actually, working with the city, developed Pierce Park. My wife taught at Carver Middle, and I worked with the homeowners association when we did the park, and I also did some improvements to Carver School, precisely having to do with the pickup and drop off. And the school has a major drop off and pickup on the back, and it also has one on the front. Why the people want to use the front, I don't know, because it's horrible. The one in the back works much better. But it is what it is. And being a magnet school, they bring students from all over the county. So it's there's very little walk-in traffic, although there is a lot of students that are from the area. And the area is very proud of that school. It's an institution that is part of that neighborhood. It's back when schools were the pride of their neighborhood, and this is one of them. And you're setting up a school catty corner to it in direct competition, which is all right, I guess. I'm not here to say that you can't do that, but I think we want to look at the land use of this issue. And right now, that land is commercial. Is that correct?
It's zoned MX1, is that correct? Yeah. Yeah, so that allows a private school by conditional use. Just to speak on the city attorney's comments about the compatibility, or more eloquently, Jennifer can chime in, but there's various references in the staff report to how it is compatible. You have, this specific district, and you have residential, you have office, you have school, all in a block radius. So it's really in keeping with what is existing there.
Okay, and what is the property on the back of it?
Single family.
Directly behind to the north?
Single family, I believe.
Single family?
Yes.
Well, schools are also compatible with single family by definition, so I don't see a compatibility issue here. Addressing the security issue, the building is actually a historic building. It's been there for a long time. It's one that addresses the environment and having to do with hurricanes. It's got hurricane doors that close in front of French doors. Actually, it's, I think, 2 sets of doors. So I don't see security being an issue if during operation times you lock all those doors except for the one that you want to use for your entrance and that you can control.
That's right.
So I would make that a condition of granting this particular
That's during the operating hours
of operation, that the doors, all of them but one, need to be closed and locked. My concern also is with the wall that you're proposing that has going to have a pattern similar to the open fence that's there, and the limitations of that wall, where it begins and where it ends.
Yeah, so the front of the property, we're not adding like any wall to that. That will continue to be, I don't know if you're familiar with the property, like how it looks. It's just like a kind of like graded fence. The back lot, it'll be just like a plain white wall up to 6 feet.
So it'll be scored with the same pattern? That's what the drawings call for.
We're planning on just doing like a plain white wall.
That's not what your package said.
Okay.
Which you're referring to the buffer wall, 6-foot buffer wall?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the buffer wall. The buffer wall will do a graded pattern on. We can make that the same as the front. And the property directly behind the school, just to speak to that as well, it is zoned as single-family residential, but it's currently being used as, it's like a butterfly garden, basically.
Okay, those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Javier. Felix?
So I think staff did a very good job in analyzing the compatibility of the school, which is not just a school, it's a very small type of school where, you know, you don't have kids running outside, you know, for exercise, that kind of thing. But, you know, we do have neighbors that have expressed the concern. Just a matter of, you know, for the record, I have had conversations in the past asking for a four-way stop in the city of Coral Gables, on the corner of my office on Zalzita and Madera. I'm directly across the street from the police station, and I was informed by our public works director that his hands are tied. He has to go to the county to get the approval just for a four-way stop or a crosswalk on any street, inside of any street in the city of Coral Gables. And it's the same thing for the county. It's the same thing for any other municipality. So I think that the neighbors have to understand that if the county does not allow that four-way stop, the city's hands are absolutely tied. And I speak from experience, and from my experience of speaking with the Public Works Director that I've known for many years. The school is, as our attorney said, a conditional use, and the application has checked off, you know, all the boxes. It's a very small use, it's a very small building, it's a very small site, but at the same time, you've thought out the parking for your teachers off-site. Yep. You've thought of the drop-off area, and unfortunately, most of the traffic on Grand Avenue has existed there for years, including, you know, from Carver. And my wife also taught at Carver. So I think at the end of the day, this is a great benefit for the community, for the children of the community. But I think that we have to listen carefully to the neighbors and their concerns, because, you know, for them, it's all about, you know, livability and safety. And they're kind of just off the highway, right off Grand Avenue. People speed through there. They don't think when they're in their cars, listening to the radio or talking on the phone, or distracted. And the last thing you want is to have a tragedy there. So I am for the application as far as it being compatible with the neighborhood, because of the scale of the neighborhood. And Grand Avenue, like every street, every, you know, simple planning theme that exists is that on the major streets, you have commercial, whether it's intense or medium or light. In this case, Grand Avenue is very light in its commercial. It's very neighborhood oriented, and the school is very neighborhood oriented. And it's right across the street from one of the jewels in the community, which is Carver. So I'm supportive of this application.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Robert?
Thank you. I'm gonna make it very brief. My wife never taught at Carver, but my three kids did attend Carver, so I'm very familiar. I'm in support of the project 100%. I would like to see if it's possible that the Public Works Director, in conjunction with the neighborhood, because you're gonna need your efforts to approach the county to be able to install whatever mechanism necessary, four-way stops, especially if the applicant is willing to pay for it.
Yep.
Okay? And I think it's doable. And I know the area very well. I think you could, as a matter of fact, there's some other block or two to the west, there's already one intersection that has it. So I'm sure that could be done as well. So I'm in support. I will make a motion to approve the project with the recommendation, my recommendation is to the Public Work Director, in conjunction with the neighborhood, looking to adding those four-way stops or whatever, speed humps, whatever they could be done. And I'll accept any friendly amendment to that recommendation.
I'd like to make some comments.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry,
that's,
Mr.
that's
Chair.
okay. No, that's okay. Just, there's a couple of questions which I had in looking at this. The officer is going to be there only 3 months? You said there was going to be a police officer for the crossing.
Correct.
But is it my understanding that he's only there 3 months?
Yeah, with the idea that, well, this is in addition to having a staff member helping to facilitate traffic and queuing, right? The police officer is there as a guardian angel to make sure that they're reporting back to Public Works and to the police department that, things are operating as we presented them to you today. And I think that's kind of the idea, right? There's oversight in that capacity, and that's kind of where they stepped in, or their recommendation.
For me, I think 3 months is really not enough, especially when you're looking at operating at the same time where you have a lot of traffic and school. My concern isn't just the crossing. My concern is the traffic that's going to be in the area. The other thing which I just wanted to ask about.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, so it's not just 3 months. At 3 months, they're allowed to then petition the city and say, look, we're complying with what we said we're going to do. Everything is working great and wonderfully. Everyone's there getting on time. We're not having any issues with traffic. At that point, then Public Works and the police department could then say, okay, you're fine. You don't have to keep paying for a police officer. But if there's still issues happening, they'll still continue having to pay for a police officer to be there on site.
I understand. I just don't think 3 months is enough time frame to really get a feel for what's going on. You have an offsite. Can you put up, is it possible on the screen, the offsite A and the offsite B?
Could you bring up a PowerPoint, please?
I just wanted to go through just to make sure I understand. Okay, so offsite B, you said is going to be a drop-off and pickup only.
Correct.
That's a commercial zone property?
That's correct.
Okay. The way I see it on the map, is there a street that's running there? Because I wasn't able to see that. How's the ingress and egress off of drop site A and B? In other words, site B, how are you treating that?
For sure.
Go ahead.
So offsite B, we entered into an agreement with the real estate group that owns the property there. One of the concerns that came up earlier in the process was particularly Public Works didn't want to see kids crossing the street. And so that's why offsite A became just teacher parking and nothing else.
Okay.
Offsite, or the school site will be straightforward, just like kids get dropped off there. Offsite B, parents will park there and walk their kid from offsite B to the school site on the sidewalk without crossing the street.
So it's not when you say drop off and pickup, they have to park there and walk. It's not a site that has vehicular traffic circulating or going in and out. In other words, the parent isn't waiting with the engine running.
Correct.
That's correct.
And how many parking spaces do you have there at offsite B?
Four spaces.
Okay. Now, let's go to offsite A. Offsite A is a commercial property or it's a residential?
Commercial as well.
Okay. And that's, how many parking spaces do you have there?
3 and 1 ADA.
Okay. And then you have, I think, 3 spaces or 4 spaces within your property.
3 and 1
3
ADA.
and 1 ADA.
Okay. Now, I saw on there that at the end of the year, you have to reapply or reevaluate that those spaces are still there and you're under contract. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. One of the items that was talked about was what Felix mentioned was good about the 4-way stop signs, but there was also a comment about traffic calming. And I don't know, and maybe Felix, you can answer, I don't know if the traffic calming or staff is that something that also has to go to the county for traffic calming? So it does. Okay. That was the question that I had based on the traffic calming.
Perfect, thanks.
Indicating yes for the record.
Thank you. To me, a big concern, I think the school is good, and I think, your concept, but looking at what the land use is and so forth, a big concern for me is traffic. because you are adapting to a school area, and I drive through there. I'm familiar with the traffic that goes on during the drop off and pickup, and it's hard. It's really hard. And I just don't know how you're really going to do it. You're going to have a limited amount of students. I understand that, but there's still going to be parents that are driving. Unless you're taking kids within the neighborhood that'll cut down on the vehicular cars, then that'll cut down on the traffic. But to me, the way I'm seeing it is there's going to be quite a bit of traffic. I mean, you can have, did your traffic engineer tell you how many cars you're going to have? He's here?
He's here,
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, John Kim with Vala Group, offices at 3 Bentwood Road, Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. I knew I wouldn't get off easy, right? The trip generation really talks more about the peak hour. And so in terms of the peak hour, we expect like the worst hour of the morning, 20 coming in and 15 coming out. But the idea here is to sort of, that graphic in particular, we tried to make it so that we could schedule parents at a time, or at least a time specific in terms of a 10-minute window. That's what kind of went behind trying, because the biggest problem with schools, I've been doing this a long time, it's the queuing. It's people getting in a line. So that's why the concept of having the offsite parking spaces as opposed to just a drop-off operation like an offsite be. Did I answer your question?
In a way, yeah, but a lot of times what I've noticed in the schools, and especially in the elementary schools, is that people come early to pick up their kids. And they just park their cars to try to be first in line or not have to wait. Did you look at that?
Well, I didn't specifically look at it, but the idea is really, it all hinges on the schedule. I mean, the school has to, and they're aware of this. I made it very clear. You're correct. I mean, I can name you a number of schools where the fences are closed purposely not to let them in, but they will park there or somewhere else in someone's yard. So everyone on the team understands the importance of that schedule. The last thing they want, and all schools will say this, but these people have the ability to not have one phone call to your public works director saying they're queuing on Jefferson or they're queuing on Grant. So that's why that schedule is, and listen, some parents obviously, they may have to whip into shape, but without that schedule, it just won't work. And that's the reason I think why the 3-month grace period, which you think maybe should be longer, we're going to find out how well these parents behave and avoid causing problems. Because it's more, I think with schools, you notice more the queuing than you would, let's say, the additional traffic in terms of this size of the school.
But you do have 4 spaces on the west lot and 3 spaces on site, correct?
4 on the east lot, which is going to be strictly for drop-off and pickup. The west lot is only for teachers and staff.
But you're on site. Behind the
On-site,
building,
it's
there's 3
3
spaces.
standard and 1 ADA. Yeah.
And I'm sorry, if I may, I had to be very careful with the county, so I only referenced the 3 spaces. I didn't count what queues in that little portico or semicircular driveway. I didn't want them, sometimes they get a little funny about that. So I referenced 3, but there's actually room for probably 4, maybe 5 pushing it.
Plus the other 4 on
the other,
on the
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and another thing to note is just with respect to the staggered schedule, right? We have a 35-student school. The whole ethos of the school is collegiality, being very involved with your students' education. The staff and teachers at the school will be able to, have conversations with these parents on a regular basis to really encourage them to meet the schedule that is imposed on them, because this is going to adversely affect the school, and it's a tight-knit community. So I think that makes it a little different than, a 200, 300, 400 student school that's trying to implement this type of plan.
And how many staff are you going to have?
To begin, there's, I believe, 2 teachers that will both act as teachers and staff.
So you're going to have basically just 2 individuals in the school at all times? You're not
Well, that's, again, the 35 number is maximum capacity. Can let Joe touch on that, but.
And yeah, that's correct. We're going to have 2 adults there during the day. Our model is what we call our teachers micro school leaders. And so a part of our business, again, to that question, is we're able to centralize a lot of the administrative work. And then micro school leaders are teachers, but they're also the people who are taking care of the admin stuff on site.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
would you feel more comfortable if instead of 3 months, that it be the first scholastic year, and for them to be able then to appeal to remove that condition? That gives you a complete scholastic year of understanding any issues.
I mean, I'm not sure about that. Javier, you had a
I
comment?
had a question, not with regards to that. It has to do with of the 35 students, how do they break down by age or grade? Or do you know?
We don't have exact numbers at the moment, but it's, I mean, roughly distributed within the grades. One of the harder things is to get like an eighth grader to come in for 1 year. So it does tend to skew a bit younger.
Younger, right?
But we'll see like when the school starts up.
And this has to do directly with the pickup and drop off, because up to about third grade, the parents are parking and walking their kids in. So there's no really queuing.
Yep.
Unless there's teachers to receive them at the pickup and, take them in one at a time. But
That is our plan, for what it's worth, is to have.
But you only have 2 individuals there.
Correct. So with the addition of the police officer, we would have.
The officer's not going to walk your child in for you.
No, I'm not expecting them to. So we would have 1 adult inside the actual building during the hour of pickup and drop off, and then 1 adult in the back lot, and they would be essentially like the receiving adult.
And just to clarify, there's only one travel lane on that side of the street, is that true? On
Correct.
Grand, only one travel lane? Okay, so that queuing is going to happen on Grand. It's going to block all the traffic on Grand. And the traffic study, was that done when Carver was in school?
I don't know that I'd call it a traffic study because of the number of trips we generated, we didn't, I mean, I think the total was, net new was like 32. So they don't, most jurisdictions don't require a comprehensive traffic study, especially with the 35 students.
And the reason I'm asking, you got school buses. How is the school bus going to?
Well, we're not going to, my
Oh,
understanding.
no, not your school buses, Carver. I mean, you have Carver traffic, okay? At the same time that you have pickup and drop off at your school, Carver's doing the same thing. And they've got a lot more students to deal with and a lot more traffic. And school buses on Grand Avenue. If you're queuing on Grand, how are those I mean, the traffic stops at that point.
Understood, but the intent is not for us to be queuing anywhere. I mean, that's not lip service. I mean, you're going to hear about it very quickly when that happens. And that is, I think that for this school, their paramount concern would be the queuing. And the last thing they want is a phone call from anybody from the city. And I think in this particular case, they have the ability. When you look at charter schools, that's a whole different ballgame. You're talking 400 and up number of students. This is, I believe, is manageable. So I'm very hopeful that we won't queue and you won't get a phone call. And it'll be you and the county that gets the phone call.
Is
more than likely.
there a covenant that's being done, Jennifer?
Yes.
So there's a covenant that's being done that'll go ahead and state the maximum amount of children that is allowed for this property?
Yes, it'll be part of the resolution.
And that's going to be a key, is for them not to increase that number. Because, look, you do have 8 parking spaces that the parents at that age, and Javier, you're right, up to grade 3, you're going to get out the car, you're going to park the car, you're going to get off the car, you're going to walk into the school and get your kid.
So those are going to be anywhere from 3 to 8 out of the 35 that are going to be tied up. So those 8 spaces go away.
Felix,
For all intents and purposes for the drop-off period. I mean, they'll drop off and then it'll liberate them and somebody else will come in and use them and you can.
But there's
use them again.
staff.
That's a valid point.
But there's
we
also
are doing,
staff and
staggering.
there's, I have, my concern is it's gonna back up
Grand.
onto Grand.
Yeah.
And the, Jefferson is not one way, it's not one lane, is it?
No, it's not one way.
No, it's 2 ways, but it's one,
It's a narrow street.
it's a fairly narrow street, but
Felix, in regard to your question for a year, I mean, I would be comfortable for 6 months, which is double what's there, and then to analyze.
Because
My concern is really the same as Javier's and what I hear from Sue. I'm just the traffic on Grand Avenue at the times. That's, I just want to make sure that there's no issue there, and I don't know how to put that in the recommendation. segregation, because we have a motion and we have a second.
No, we have a second. We don't have a second.
There was no second?
No
Jill?
second.
No,
second yet.
no second. And what
He was
the-
opening to friendly amendments.
I welcome friendly amendments.
And I think you were going to try, I think you were going to try to add the security
I was gonna
thing
add
on,
that
on there. That's where we left off.
Definitely, we need a security thing on there. And let me just tell you about locked doors. Uvalde, Texas, that was supposed to be a locked door. A teacher went out to smoke a cigarette and left the door unlocked. That's how that gunman got in.
Yeah.
So this notion about we're going to lock the doors, who's going to check that they're locked is my concern.
It's a valid concern. I can't pretend to know what the future holds in that regard, but we do have, it's a smaller space is the one thing that I would say. It's essentially 2 rooms on the ground floor, and there are 4 doors on the Grand Avenue facing side, but then we also have 2 doors in the back. I'm not aware that any of our teachers are smokers, but if they were to take a smoke break, I understand it's not the
I mean, practically speaking, you have 2 people and 35 kids. They're not going to be checking if the doors are locked.
Well, the two micro school leaders, we will definitely enforce that. Like, that is something that we will enforce.
I'm just saying, I mean, you have very limited personnel to handle a lot of responsibilities, including walking the kids from their parents' car to your school.
No, they're not going to
no,
be
the parents will do that.
walking
Pardon me?
children to
Parents will
school.
do that.
The parents are walking the students.
Okay.
They're on site.
But just to finish the point, functionally, it's 2 large rooms, like on a ground floor. We are channeling everything into the back lot, which is a lot that we control more than the front, obviously. And so I do hear the concern. I'm not trying to avoid that, but the ingress and egress is going to be through the back 99% of the time.
Is there a way to secure those 4 doors with just a fire release only? I mean, permanently locked, except in case of fire, you have to break something to open up those doors.
We would, be amenable to that. We haven't looked into that, but we could be amenable to that.
Okay, I mean, I'd feel better with that. I would vote yes in that case with conditions, with that as being one of the conditions. But I just fear for the safety of those kids with this configuration.
What you could do, I mean, I don't think you could permanently lock those doors, but I think you could lock them and you could put an alarm that if it opens, the alarm will go off or something. That you could do. But I will not want to put a condition.
Is that part of our?
No,
what
no,
we're
it's
looking at
not.
here?
But I will not want to put a condition that those locked to remain locked. God forbid there's a fire and they can't get out.
Well,
The
that's
only
what
way
I'm
that-
saying. In case of fire, there has to be some kind of release. And as far as conditional use, I believe that should be in our purview to put that into a motion. I mean, we're talking about a major safety issue here.
I'm not sure that.
Well, I think it's more of a building permit and a building code as far as what they're permitted to do with regard to the ingress and egress. Now, I think what the board can recommend is to look at appropriate securing
Safety.
of the doors on Grand Avenue. And we can leave it at that and allow the building department to look at that to see what is permitted. So I think we can go that far, but I don't know what is required. The concept of maybe breaking some glass to get out, that may not be good because you may want to have, there may be a fire and they may have to
Well,
get children.
That's what
So
I'm saying.
that's
An
why I'm
emergency
saying,
exit. There are emergency exits, right? Architects, there are emergency exits. Why can't those be emergency exits?
well, that's why I'm saying is to suggest that the board can suggest the building department look at making sure that the doors that are adjacent to Grand Avenue be appropriately secured.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
a
that
doable
kind of gets
request,
you to
condition.
where you want to be.
Yeah, that's a doable condition, but we cannot impose for them to install anything. Let the building department deal with it. Safety is a concern for everybody here, for them, and that we leave it at that. But I am, at least in my motion, I'm not gonna put that we need to put locks, mechanism, anything that could potentially create another problem.
Well, I think we need to put something in there, maybe not the specific kind of door, but there has to be some kind of safety measure put in.
But he just explained what.
Well, I
we
think
can
I
recommend.
think there's a general condition you say that the the building department look at appropriate securing of the doors that are adjacent to Grand Avenue. And that gives the building department the flexibility of determining what is appropriate for fire, code, safety, and all the other requirements that are part of a building code review.
And that goes into the motion? Is that what you're saying?
I made a motion, whoever does the second was a friendly.
I give you a second with a friendly amendment that the applicant ensure that the doors along Grand Avenue are secured during hours of operation.
And would you end the 6 months for the police officer as opposed to the 3 months?
I would do the scholastic year. Who came up with this? Was that you, scholastic year? I think that makes
But it
sense.
has to be reviewed after 6 months. It's not just 6 months and he walks away. I just think during 6 months, you get a barometer.
I think 6 months is plenty of time
They
to
could
do it.
appeal.
Yeah, much better than 3 months.
Just to get a barometer.
Right.
I'm not saying that then he can walk away.
Right.
And the other thing that I would ask is, I would ask in your amendment for staff to look further into the traffic in that area and if there's anything that can be done to alleviate, and I don't know how.
And that's what
I'm just very concerned with
Well,
traffic.
that's my motion to get Public Work and staff and the homeowner association to work together with the county and Public Works to achieve something.
And the improvements are on the applicant.
Yes, they're simple. They're
Which,
gonna
which the applicant has indicated that they would be willing to pay for.
Correct. Can I ask for a point of clarification with respect to the 6-month police officer? Would that, or 6-month tenure of the police officer, would that be for the initial year of the school, and then thereafter we could revert back to the 3 months as staff recommended?
For me, it would be 6 months, and then there's a determination that's made by the city, by staff or so forth.
Okay, just so I can clarify, there's just looking at the conditions of approval for number 5C. There's a sentence that says, upon applicant's request, Public Works and Police may elect to reduce such 3-month review period for subsequent school years, provided that applicant provides sufficient evidence substantiating the effectiveness of its internal traffic monitoring procedures. Could we include that same language, provided that it's 6 months?
I think that it should be 6 months for the initial, and it can go 3 months every
Afterwards.
year thereafter.
Right.
And really, the reason we want that and the reason it's there is that as the school year and you get all new students coming in, everybody starts to fall into place. And that happens in the first 3 months, and we just want to make sure that it's supervised during those first 3 months. And I think that's reasonable.
Yep.
And asking for 6 for the first year, I'd be fine with that.
You're new. I would just like to.
Let me just ask something. So if we discover that the cars are blocking Grand Avenue and it's a major problem, what's the cure for that?
Staff?
So if they are queuing in Grand Avenue, that means that their traffic plan is not working. So the police will get involved and make sure that the parents and whoever's supposed to be parking and arriving at those times should be started arriving at those times. I mean,
Or would then police get more involved and have to have more officers there?
Yeah, and I think to get tough about it, I believe there have been instances, at least in Miami-Dade County, where even in gated communities, if the cars are queuing into the public right-of-way, the officer can issue a citation. So I hope that doesn't happen. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying, to answer your question.
Whoever is the police officer is going to probably end up issuing a couple of citations in the first 3 months. And the other concern is in the opposite direction on Jefferson, that they queue up there and then block that exit for the neighborhood to try to get in and turn around into the drop-off. So
Saying coming south on Jefferson?
they'll come in and stop and block traffic for people trying to get out.
Well, there'll be, right, there's the 3 spots. There's, as John mentioned,
I would
potential
just
for.
add that other lane needs to be kept clear during the drop-off period.
The southern lane.
Yeah, the southbound lane.
Yeah, so to encourage parents to come off of Grand.
No, to force them. We don't want to encourage, we want to force them to come in and drop off.
All right, we have a motion. We have a second with the amendments. Any other discussion? No? Call the roll, please.
Julio Gabriel,
Yes.
Zuka Malinsky,
Yes.
Felix Pardo,
Yes.
Javier Salman,
I say yes to the one-room schoolhouse.
Chip Withers,
Yes.
Robert Behar,
Yes.
A.B. Eisenstadt.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Good luck.
I appreciate it.
Mr. Caller, the next item on the agenda?
Yes. Item E2, an ordinance of the City Commission providing for text amendments to Article 2 zoning district, Section 2-405, Residential Infill Regulations Overlay District, RIR, of the City of Coral Gables official zoning code to provide a maximum building length of 300 feet for all properties seeking approval pursuant to the residential infill regulations, providing for severability clause, repealer provision, codification, and providing for an effective date. Item E2, public hearing.
All right, for the record, Jennifer Garcia, City Planner, and I have a lengthy presentation for this. This is the item we discussed back in June. We asked for additional information from the Board of Architects. They appeared, I think, in July of this year. It was referred again by this board to get additional information, so that's why we're here today to give the presentation, okay? So this is the layout of this presentation. So first I'll start out talk about the purpose and regulations of the RIR, a little bit of the history of the North Ponce area, the existing conditions in the area as well, and then some past community visions of how we got to this legislation that's been in effect for, I think, about since 2017. So what is that, 6 years or so? Some capital improvements that have been done in the neighborhood, as well as the recent policy changes, including the RIR. Some approved projects have been approved through the RIR regulations, and then some analysis and the proposed changes for discussion. So the RIR, which is called the Residential Infill Regulations, was meant to provide additional housing opportunities in this area. So the North Ponce area is a very dense part of our city. It's just north of downtown, and the intent of it was to provide a greater density in that area. And the regulations are crafted in a way to have the buildings be more pedestrian-oriented and have a garden-like feel, which because the area is very known for the garden apartments. Also, Mediterranean architecture was a very important standard that's required in this RIR regulations to increase the potential density, right, of this area. So it doubles the density, and I'll get to that in just a second. So the minimum standards are that the lot site has to be 20,000 square feet. Sorry, the building site needs to be 20,000 square feet. If you don't have 20,000 square feet, you can't take advantage of the RIR. The density doubles from 50 units an acre to 100 units an acre if you take advantage of the RIR. The FAR is the same at 2.0 or 2.5 with architectural incentives. The maximum height is 100 feet. And as I said, the Mediterranean architecture is required for all these buildings. So this is a graphic that kind of shows what those requirements are for the RIR. The setback is 10 feet all around the building site, which again I said is 20,000 square feet is the minimum building site for any building site with RIR. There's a step back at 45 feet, and the maximum height is 100 feet. So a little bit of the history. Most of the North Ponce area is the Douglas section, and that comprises mostly of Ponce Leon and a little bit of segment of East Ponce that veers off. I should say that the north is on the right, so if you tilt your head over to the right, that's how the north is situated. So this is a map, a use map from the 1930s, and as you can see, the yellow is representing apartment or hotel uses. So this area was really meant for apartments. It's known as the apartment district until recently when it was kind of rebranded as the North Ponce. So an important entrance into this area is the Douglas entrance, which is off on the northeast part of the neighborhood. This was basically the main entrance. It was envisioned originally to have lots of apartments in it and basically a very small village-type feel. It was meant to be an entranceway into what they called the most important section of Coral Gables. So this is a rendering of the Douglas section, which was supposed to be one of many institutional or civic uses of the area. So many of you, probably the older, mature residents, may remember the Coliseum, which is located, people are shaking their head, yes. I unfortunately never got to know the Coliseum, but it's supposed to be a very beautiful building. And that's located on the present side of the Publix on Douglas. So most of the area was planned to have apartments, apartments of different scales and different typologies. A lot of them were full of many, many units, very, very dense units. So you can see here, there's some buildings that had that had a very square feeling. The bottom one is a little more playful with the massing. Some of them were more designed as a house typology. This one's on Madera, which is more of a, like I said, like a house typology. This is right now, I think, bed and breakfast, I believe, on Phoenicia. And let's get to the existing conditions. Like I said, this area, North Ponce, is just north of Alhambra and south of H Street on the west side of Douglas to the city limits to the to the west. And from this map, if you, I guess, look carefully, it's comprised mostly of very small building footprints as it was developed in the past, in the earlier part of the century. So this is a map that shows the year built. So a lot of the darker green are the older buildings, and the newer buildings are the orange and red. So you can see a lot of the buildings existing right now are pretty old, not historic, but just pre-World War. So there are many buildings that are also historic. There's a few that are sprinkled out. The top one is Douglas's original house. That was named after the section, of course. The bottom one is part of a little mini historic district that's on Menores. And the public realm is very simple. There's a 5-foot sidewalk and a 6-foot green strip with shade trees on, I think, most all the streets in the area, and then the asphalt. There's always parking on both sides of the street with 2 lanes of traffic. There's another image that shows that public realm condition. And Phillips Park is the heart of the city of the district. It's also the second busiest park in the city as well. So as you can imagine, this part of the city's been studied a lot, dating back to 2002 for the charrette. After that, I think 2005, there was a North Ponce strategies for redevelopment. Then there was a landscape master plan, and as well as right now, there's not right now, but most recently, 2015, there's a North Ponce Community Visiting Workshop. So the 2002 charrette looked at potential infill of the area. They looked at building types that could be rebuilt for those small lots and how to build buildings that kind of fit the character of the neighborhood. And then the master streetscape plan, there's laid out different street types for each of those blocks. But most recently in the 2015 plan, there was an extensive amount of community engagement. And from that came a lot of diagrams and plans and recommendations for adoption. So this is a plan that shows on the left side the open space that's in the area and potential future open space in the area as well. The diagram on the right is the city parking lots, because you can imagine as those smaller buildings have more and more people living in them that are not accommodating the parking, they should probably store their cars somewhere, as has been studied in that area as well. So there are recommendations that came from the North Ponce community visioning. Some of them were short-term, other ones were long-term plans, and from that came a lot of capital improvements. So there's a canopy tree planting plan that went forward that replaced all the palm trees that were on some of the blocks with shade trees. There's a new park that was part of the city right now. It's at 301 Majorca. There's a North Ponce streetscape program that a lot of the newer projects are taking advantage of the RIR, are actually contributing to this plan to be able to rebuild some of those streets that have proper shade trees. And Alhambra Circle also has a master plan for replacing some of that asphalt and reusing it as street trees, bike lane, and additional landscape in that area. And there's another plan for East Ponce as well. And Galliano, there's another plan for undergrounding those utility lines on Galliano and replacing with proper shade trees. So recently in 2015, from the 2015 community vision, there's been 3 major policy changes that came from that: the North Ponce Conservation District, the North Ponce Mixed Use District, and then the residential infra regulations, which we're talking about today. So the North Ponce the North Ponce Neighborhood Conservation District makes up mostly of those apartment buildings that are just off of Ponce de Leon. And you can see here that these are the buildings that are highlighted, are the ones that have been built before 1964. 1964 is when parking was started to be required. So those are the buildings that are colored here, and they're organized based on the year built. So the North Ponce Conservation District, pre-1964, allows buildings to have additions in the rear and in the side, some variances as far as open space and setback, and some allowances to be able to preserve those buildings. If you're designated historic, then you're allowed to sell your TDRs to a receiving site. You also have conditional use such as a bed and breakfast, museums, schools. Your parking can be waived. You have additional benefits for being historic landmark. And then the RAR, like I said, has the minimum building size of 20,000 square feet, maximum height of 100 feet, and the setbacks and stepbacks. And the mixed-use district is just along Ponce de Leon, meant to incentivize mixed use. So you can see here that the mixed-use district is meant to transition down to the MF2 zone properties to kind of create a transition from the higher buildings on Ponce de Leon down to the multifamily buildings. Now, there's been a few approved and I guess built projects as a result of the RIR. The first one was 44 Zamora, the location of Galliano and Zamora. There was a 23 Sedonia, which is probably the smallest one. It had a building frontage of 171 feet. It comprised of 4 platted lots. Then 211 Santillan, which is currently a vacant lot on the 200 block of Santillan. It had a building frontage of 217 feet. And most recently, one was on Maivera, the 300 block of Maivera, which had a building frontage of 477 feet. So looking at the area, on the map on the left is the future land use map, which is consistent with the zoning map. As you can see, most of the brown is the MF2 multifamily, which is taking advantage of the RIR. The red is the commercial, which we're not really talking about today. So density, I want to bring up this slide because the historic buildings are actually more dense than what the RIR is allowing. But the building on the left is actually 126 Mendoza. It was recently designated historic building. It currently has 120 units an acre. As you know, you count density as units per acre. And the building on the right, which is 44 Zamora, has a maximum density of 100 units an acre. So you can see it's much larger, even though it has less density, because density doesn't really impact your built environment. It's really just the height and the FAR that does that. This is analysis that shows the common ownerships and the common ownerships of the properties that are actually large enough to be impacted by the proposed legislation. So the bright orange, are 4 properties. The first one is the one on 300 block of Maivera. Another one is 44 Zamora, which are 2 approved projects right now. There's 2 additional ones that are on Sedonia and Salamanca. So their building length, their building site is 335 feet. Other one is 440 feet. So if you would imagine if you built a building there that's only 300 feet, those 2 would be impacted. The ones that have approved projects would not be impacted by the legislation. So looking at the layout of the district, the average block length is about 455 feet to a maximum of about 630 feet. So they can be quite long. The depth of these blocks are 220 feet. So zooming in, each platted lot is about 50 feet and 110 feet deep. And you can see that most of the existing character of the neighborhood has built out on these 50-foot wide lots. Some of them do take up 2 and a maximum of 3 platted lots for these small-scale developments. So the minimum requirement is 20,000 square feet, which takes up approximately 4 platted lots. And if you build on top of that, that would be about 180 feet. But right now, there's no maximum as far as the RIR. So that's what we're trying to, thank you. That's what we're trying to accomplish today. So the proposed is a maximum of 300 feet, which would be 6 platted lots. Remember, the 4 is the minimum required, so there'd be 6 platted lots. And that's how it looked like on the existing neighborhood fabric. Right now, there is only one building within the area that's built that is wider than 300 feet. It's 310 feet, and it's a 2-story townhouse development that was built in the mid-century that's located on the 0 block of Madera. And so here's a massing of what it could look like if it was limited to 300 feet within the existing character of the neighborhood. So you can see at 300 feet maximum building length looking south and what that would look like with the existing character. And looking down and seeing the 6 platted lots, that would be the maximum that you would most likely be developing. Another view of that. So 300 feet came from Miami 21. It has a lot of 300 feet maximum rules that they have in their code. Additionally, based on feedback we got from June, we did look in the zoning code, and in 1965, there was a 20-foot building separation for any apartment building or any apartment building site that had multiple buildings on it. So we're comfortable with amending what we had proposed originally with 300-foot maximum, and then if there are multiple buildings on that lot, that they be separated by 20 feet. So that's it.
Thank you. Since the city is the applicant, do we have any speakers on this,
No, we don't.
on any of the platforms?
No.
Okay. At that point, I'll go ahead and close it for public comment. I'd actually like to get some input first from the architects on this. Felix?
Yeah, I sat on the original North Gables Apartment District Committee, and the reason was because we, at that time, many, many years ago, we were concerned that we were going to lose many of these quaint buildings, which, of course, we have. And it was accelerated in 2015 when, in my opinion, the charrette was misguided, completely misguided. I've owned historic buildings, and I've got to tell you, the scale is very different. One of the concerns I have is that when you look and you know, I'll take anything at this point. This is what's before us right now. You know, you chuckle and you know, that at the end of the day, that entire North Gables area is going to lose 3 things. Number one, that's where our affordable housing is today. When a new project gets built, it's not affordable anymore. By the time you put in the interest rates, the construction costs of this year, the land cost, all of these things put together, it's just a matter of putting as much as you can, 2 pounds into a 1 pound bag. The second thing is the fabric changes. Because now, and you saw by staff's graphics, you saw what happened when you had these little multiple buildings on the block, on a city block, and then you had all these setbacks, which provided all the green space that we lose once we allow the developer to consolidate and then just compact it and make it as big as they're allowed to make it. It's not about the density, it's the quality of what's there. That's the second thing is lost permanently. And the third thing, which is, I think, really, really important, is that once all this gets built out the way it's directed, which was, in my opinion, poorly done in 2015 at best, is that these people now, they're in there like sardines. They don't even have a place to walk their dog. So they have a sidewalk, it's a little green space, there are no larger spaces, there are no spaces for trees in between smaller buildings. So those are the three components that are terrible. So when you say, well, we're going to limit because of a half a dozen of these properties, we're going to limit only up to 300 feet, it's a travesty. Because if you take that 300 feet and you turn it vertically, it's a 30-story building. And that's what's happened throughout, or what will be happening throughout that area. So if you look at this carefully, the 300-foot limitation that staff is coming up with now, based on what one of the commissioners requested, it's not really a step in the right direction. It's really a placebo. So I weep for that area. It has been changed. It will be permanently changed in the future. And we, as citizens of Coral Gables, will have lost this area forever. That being said, what George Merrick intended on that original map was there was a north-south corridor, which was on Ponce. And the north-south corridor was based on a street that was a right-of-way that was over 100 feet in width. I don't have a problem with tall buildings and large buildings and mixed uses there. But when you walk through these areas, these streets, and you see these tree canopies, that's toast.
Thank you. Javier?
Felix had a lot to say that I agree with. I just want to add, without being repetitive, that part of that canopy that we have has to do with the front areas in front of the buildings. Yeah, they're actually a higher density as per unit because there's really a lot of them with little small units, which is what's making them affordable. But they also have a variety of setbacks. Some of them, have 10, some have 25, some vary where they're closer to the street. I mean, I'm working on one now that is on a smaller lot that is actually a U-shaped building, and it has a big courtyard, and it has trees in the courtyard. So if you take the average depth from the street till you hit the building, the depth of it is like 25 feet. And there's a language to this area that is composed of the boundaries that were originally created in the form of the property lines, but also the sidewalks and the green areas, and even the curbs, that is a different language than you have in the suburban, where you have wider green areas and greater forced setbacks. Here, the setbacks are a little more fluid in that they were done not necessarily to the maximum use to bring it to the minimum footprint, minimum setback allowed. So I think that the 300-foot is something, and you're forcing anything more than 300 feet to be broken up into two buildings with a 20-foot space in between. That's what you're telling us, right? Did I understand that correctly?
Yes.
I would like to see maybe we also add an increase in the average depth away from the street that needs to be landscaped. Because that's really the character of that area and is what gives it its scale. Because it's not just the canopy that's along the street, it's the canopy that's contributed by the properties on either side in many respects. And we've lost that. Wherever we get a big building put up, it goes right to the minimum setbacks, and then you get a little strip of green with nothing on it, okay? And then you have that green space between the sidewalk and the edge of the street, which can only have so many trees, but they look so lonely out there. And the whole concept of the outdoor room is lost on one side, where one side totally dominates the area. And in some cases, if they're on the south side, they shade the street to the point where it's fundamentally changed. And I don't see that 300-foot limit is something that is gonna contribute to doing that without having some sort of a varied setback component where we come up with an average setback that they have to meet, that how they meet it is up to them. I don't want to be prescriptive. The problem with Miami 21 is this is too damn prescriptive. And that if we give them and say that they have to do a 25-foot setback on average between 10 and whatever they want to do, and that forces them, without having to say, you have to have a courtyard, it has to be a minimum of this, they'll figure it out. I think we need to look at something like that. I mean, I'll take what I get. I don't have a problem with that, but it's a start. But I think that's really where we should go, at least in my opinion, as to how I understand Coral Gables, and I understand that area very well because I had my office on Ponce at 901 for 25 years. And I walked that whole area, and I know it well. I have a lot of friends who live there, a lot of employees who live there. It's a really nice area. In fact, just a little bit of history, the Douglas entrance, the reason that it is still there is because a couple of the principals of the architecture firm lived there in the apartment buildings. And then they decided to buy it and make their office. And they were there for, what, 50 years, 60 years?
Well, actually,
Are they still there as part of AECOM? No.
I'm sorry. Actually, it's even more interesting.
So
Douglas Center is going to be torn down.
you're kidding.
No, a food fair.
For a food fair?
For a food
You're
fair.
kidding me.
No. And then Andy.
Okay, I'm going to go in front of that bulldozer.
Then Andy Ferrandino and Ed Grafton.
I know, those are the ones I mentioned, but nobody would know who they are, so that's why I didn't say.
Sold their homes in Gables Estates to buy Douglas Entrance and move the office over there. So it is there because of those two individuals. The city was not considering it an important building enough to preserve it.
So anyway, there you go. That is a crying shame.
Thank you. Julio?
Question. Right now, without the 300 feet length control, what could be built in that zone?
They can take up the entire block. That's what I'm showing this. This is the no maximum scenario.
Right now, as it is right now.
Yes.
So what we're doing right now is limiting the maximum development on the block.
Correct.
And I think the pressure is, I mean, I understand and I cry for the loss of affordable units, but I think the value of the land and the real estate is such in that area that it's going to happen.
Highest and best use.
Nothing we could do unless it's a historic building that the city can preserve and force the developer to keep, like we've seen. It's the movement of the pressure of real estate that's going to happen. Now, the question then becomes, in my mind, how can we still preserve some of the valuable and quality of the area once as that happens? And I think moving into a 300-foot maximum is in the right direction. I don't know if it's enough, but it's in the right direction. How about the setbacks from the street? Has that changed?
No, those proposed to stay the same at 10 feet.
So whatever setbacks we have right now in those existing buildings on that zone are going to remain
10 feet, correct.
as it is. So there's no problem with buildings being built all the way to the sidewalk.
No, not in this area, not for the RIR. No, they're required to have a 10-foot landscape front yard, no fences, no walls. It's supposed to be meant to be kind of garden-like, to really be more or less in keeping with the existing fabric. and the character of the area.
Okay, thank you.
Sue, you seem that you wanted to speak.
I'm not an architect. Any other architects here that want to speak first?
You know enough now that you can speak as an architect.
I have to echo what you said and what Felix said. I mean, this is sad. Who allowed this to happen? I know we're not supposed to be talking about history here, but who allowed this to happen? I mean, this is awful. Just absolutely awful. It's sad. And what can we do? What can we do? What can we do about this? I mean, I'm asking you a question. You've been on this board a lot longer than I have. What can we do? Because this 300.
Let's direct our comments specifically to the agenda item.
Okay. Well, my thought about this agenda item is that we table it and until there's wise heads that prevail and figure out what to do to stop the destruction of this neighborhood. That's my thought. Let's just table this motion.
Yeah, but if we table it, then anybody can come in and build a whole 600 feet. There's nothing to stop them.
Exactly.
So we got to take what we got, which was Felix's point.
Okay, then what?
And I was adding, let's add
I don't think either your mic's not on.
No, I was way back for there, sorry.
That's okay.
And then my idea was that we also add some sort of a minimum average setback that would be allowed or required.
Well, I mean, who came up with 300? I know it's from Miami 21. We're all great fans of that, aren't we? Miami 21. You said it yourself.
I hit it
It's
with a purple
prescriptive,
passion.
right? So why don't we make it? I mean, can this board make a suggestion that it's 100 feet? Who came up with 300 other than Miami 21?
Well, the minimum lot size has to be 20,000 square feet.
Okay.
At that, you're pushing probably close to 200 feet for the building lot, for the building length.
Okay,
The
you're
minimum
pushing
requirement right now is probably about 200 feet anyway.
200 feet?
Yes.
Okay, I'd go 200 rather than 300.
Are you done? Any further comments?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion. I want to.
Wait, we got a couple people.
Excuse me. We have other board members that have not gotten a chance to
Okay,
speak.
all right.
And I'd like to give everybody an opportunity to speak.
Okay.
And I know, there's people that are very passionate. It's a good point to make how you feel during discussion and bring everything out. But it's important that we hear everybody. Chip?
Yeah, so I think when we first looked at the mixed-use ordinance in this area, the idea was to use the mixed-use ordinance to keep the village concept in play. And that village concept was to maybe allow parking in the front as opposed to behind or underneath, but in return, they would allow a little bit more density to put a little more in there to cover their costs. But I don't think the intent of the original mixed-use ordinance was ever to build large 300-foot-long buildings in this area. I don't know. But I don't know what happened in 15 or 16 or 17, Sue. But it's a shame the direction it's headed in. So I guess my question is, do these buildings now, are they entitled to bonuses as well? Any kind of FAR bonuses?
Yeah, so they're required to do the med bonus. That's part of the requirement to be a Mediterranean building. So with that comes the 0.5 FAR as well as the height.
So if you took that requirement away and made them build to the code right now, what would that be?
Well, remember, the RIR is a conditional use, so it's not.
I understand.
Okay.
I mean, would it be 50 feet, 60 feet? I mean, if we're looking for ways to limit development up there, would that be a way to limit the development?
Well, the underlying zoning allows you to go 70 feet if you're MF2 or 97 with med bonus.
So if we did decide on a 200-foot length, we could go with a 70-foot height? Would we be taking anybody's property rights away by doing something like that?
Well, I think you're going to have to proceed with caution because you have to remember.
I know, that's why I'm having this discussion. I want to know.
I don't like to exactly detail everything, but you have to consider what people currently are able
Exactly
to do.
correct.
So when you trim around the edges, you just have to be mindful of that.
And that's exactly the direction I'm going in, is we can't take away development rights from people without putting the city in a very, very difficult situation. But can we do workarounds through bonuses, through setbacks, through FAR, through other means to help restrict growth in that area? And I'm not talking about shutting it down. I'm just talking about putting a theme back into the city that I think everybody would like to see there.
You could do something like that moving forward so that people cannot assemble
Right.
lot, in excess.
I got it.
The problem is that, and I want to see the properties that are currently there that exceed the sizes, those you cannot do this because then you're going to take away property rights to them. So,
I thought there were only 4, though, weren't there? Weren't there only 4? There were 300,
Okay.
and 2 of them have already been developed.
So far.
Yeah, so far, but I mean, as of right now.
but we don't know what owners have more than the 6 lots assembled that you could do bigger buildings. I'm in favor of moving forward. You cannot assemble to do X. But if you have a property today that is in excess of 6 lots, you're taking the development right away from them. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. City Attorney.
There are some concerns.
Okay, so
That's a pretty broad answer. And-
yeah.
I mean, where does the planned area development overlays come into play up here? Does it come into play that often?
So you can have a pad if you're 1 acre.
Okay.
It's 43,000.
Right,
So twice the size of the minimum building site we have right now.
correct.
Correct.
And Mr. Sheriff said, today, the only difference from what you're proposing is that the limitation on the 300-foot maximum length, but everything else
It's still,
is still there.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not like, my concern, and Mr. Attorney, City Attorney will emphasize, we got to be careful how we do this.
absolutely.
Okay, I could see, and I'm gonna let you finish before I.
No. I mean, really, the only area I think we have flexibility in is the bonuses, is what we allow people. Because, I mean, it's really at our discretion on whether we want to.
Jennifer, let me ask you a question. You're proposing 20 feet between the buildings when you go ahead and do that.
That's
If
based
you-
on feedback from the June meeting.
No,
that we
I
had.
understand.
Right.
There are, to me, and I'm not an architect, but when you travel to Europe, there's been long buildings that if they're designed correctly and you have residential in front and they're set back or you have stairs and steps, it just works right and it gives that hometown feeling. As opposed to a straight wall. Wouldn't the city be better off some kind of an exchange for a park, a bigger area, as opposed to just a 20-foot green space between a building? So I don't know how, but an incentive. You showed previously that you designated some areas as green space.
Yes, right.
What about if an owner goes ahead and gives on the ground floor a park, an area that is a usable park for the city? Isn't there a bigger benefit than just a 20-foot space between the building?
As an architect, I will tell you yes, that because 20 feet is
What are you going to do?
Not a lot.
not a lot.
Between 2 8-story towers, nothing.
No,
It's the length of a parking lot.
I'd rather take a good chunk on the ground floor. I don't know, a lot is 50 by 100, a lot, and make that a green space that is accessible to the public, more so than a 20-foot strip.
That's what I'm looking at.
And we also have to be very careful here that we have not contemplated, I don't know if the city is looking into it, the SB 102, which I mentioned it a few meetings ago. That's a state resolution, right, statute that passed, that they could do, a building could be done within the height or the density of a mile from that location of the city, right? And you don't even have to come here. You don't have to come to the city. And that's something that we, Doral and Hollywood, the city of Doral and Hollywood has already tried to appeal it, and there's no turning back. And what I'm concerned is if we start limiting too much, that's going to happen. My concern here, the fundamental concern is taking away people's development right that you have it today. I could be in favor moving forward that people cannot assemble the land. But if you already own those land today, I'm really concerned that that's really taking.
Well, this is a real disincentive to really put together more than 6 lots, because you're going to be penalized a lot, whether you like it or not.
Going forward.
Going forward.
That's what I'm saying.
But to implement this on the on those owners that have more than 306 lots, you're taking away their development rights, whether we like it or not.
But if you take away their bonuses, if we say we suspend all bonuses in that area,
But you can't do that because if you own the land and you bought the land 10 years ago in 20, or whenever this passed, and you buy your property and you had the property before this, it's been.
nah, I don't know. I think if bonus, I don't know.
That's your discretion.
I think the bonuses are pretty much at the discretion of the city.
But the bonuses are to the Board of Architects.
No. I don't know. I mean, I'm getting in a territory that I'd have to let our legal eagle down there. But I mean, what did we do on Biltmore Way? I wasn't on the board, but what was done on one side of Biltmore Way, on the other side of Biltmore Way, as far as the bonus overlay?
It's different on the south side than the north side. Sorry, it's different on the south side than the north side, and the reason is unjustifiable in my opinion. But the thing is that on the south side, there's a very big difference in height, and then the north side, all of a sudden, it became a high-rise whatever, and it was again not poorly. It was poorly thought out. The biggest problem that you have here tonight, that we all have, that the city has, this is not just systemic to the North Gables area. Right now, there is nothing that prevents developers from accumulating entire blocks abutting duplex areas, single-family residential areas. If you have just the right zone, you can now basically wipe out an entire block, which means the entire fabric that historically was there. So one thing is, Robert is 100% right about property rights. I'm not concerned about the state law. Eventually, state legislature is going to be changed, and that law will be removed. And I think what's going to happen at the end of the day is that you have to look at what the fabric is. So when you have a tool, a design tool, like bonuses, and you have certain boards that will allow certain bonuses, they can put into play many things, and it's not just the aesthetic thing when it comes to the architecture, which includes, four-letter words like compatibility. And what I'm saying is, right now, I would move this forward on the 300 feet, but I would definitely direct staff to tell the commission that we are extremely concerned with other components that must be addressed, not just this particular thing that we have before us today.
Right now, we're just looking at what we have.
Correct. Correct.
If any of us has a concern, then we should speak to that commissioner or that representative, possibly that appointed that person, or voice your opinion. But what I'd like to do at this point is look what we have before us.
Jennifer, how many projects are in the pipeline right now for this area?
Currently in the pipeline?
Yeah.
I don't know of any.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, and something else, as bad as Miami 21 is, and I deal with Miami 21 probably a little bit more than most of the architects here, because it gave you a timeline that if the property was assembled prior to its 2010, you're not affected. Anything after that. And I think that may be a solution here. If the property, the assemblage was prior to a date,
2023?
well, look, I don't, that answer, I don't know, but.
I'm just kidding, bro.
But I think that moving forward, you cannot assemble,
Right.
more than, or you could assemble more. You could assemble the whole block, but you're gonna have limitation of how big the building will be. Whether it's 300, 200, 200, I don't think is, but that would be moving forward. It should not affect properties that were already, assembled since 1975. That's my concern. Because essentially, you're telling a property owner says, yeah, you're allowed to do all this, but moving forward,
You can't do it.
I take that away from you. I don't think I think that will put the city in a predicament that is going to be very difficult to overcome. And Felix, I respectfully disagree that SB 102, that's here to stay. And hopefully it does not happen. Hopefully we don't get a developer that does anything like that in Coral Gables. Because here we have example within a mile distance from any property, a project that is 223 feet high. That's a 21-story building.
Different jurisdiction.
No, sir. The plaza is 223 feet high. Forget about within our jurisdiction.
But not to the habitable space.
Huh?
Not to the habitable space. The habitable space is to 190.
Is it 190?
Yes.
Okay, 223
No,
to
that's why I
190.
thought you were talking about the one on the highway.
No, that's City of Man.
No, that's
doesn't
why I
affect-
said different jurisdiction.
The plaza is 190 plus.
Yeah.
So somebody could do on here with the density allowed, because you cannot exceed the density and the FAR. But you could do a project that is on a 20,000 square foot lot, a 18-story building.
As long as the infrastructure is there.
So regarding this item, what's the issue about recommending 200?
If I'm gonna speak for me, I'm not in favor. I think 300 would be the minimum that I would go for. Me personally, I think that 300 feet, if it's treated correctly, it's not, to me, it's not an issue.
But what is the issue? Is there an issue with 200 feet versus 300 feet?
It's a larger universe of properties. Because then all you got to do is assemble 4. Then you're limiting that number from 6 to 4. And there's a lots around here that are probably easily assembled into 4.
And keep in mind, the lots here, the depth are not standard. When this city was platted, the depth is only 100, for the most part, 100 feet.
110.
110. Most municipality is like 150.
Right.
So when you start having to put a liner unit and, you really take away so much ability on the potential. Forget about whether you go 97, 70 or anything. 4 stories, you take away a lot of, you really limit the ability. And Javier said something, you're really becoming very prescribed.
Very what?
Prescribed.
Prescribed.
Everything will look the same. Chip, you had
But I just, Robert, is your concern violating folks' abilities in their rights and the city's liable? Is that why you don't want to go to 200 feet, or do you think 200 feet is not a workable number?
I personally don't think 200, because you still have setbacks, okay? Because it's 300 feet and you're gonna have to have setbacks. minimum, right? You got to step back, and so that building, 200 feet, will become 150 feet. And 150 feet, when a unit is, an average unit is about 35 feet. So how many units you gonna get? 4 units by the time you do the setback, and 4 unit, so you're not talking. It's not gonna be I don't think it's going to be sufficient. I think 300, moving forward, 300 may be a number that will work. And like AB said, look at a lot of the European cities. The architecture plays with that. We're really being very, and the quality of the project doesn't mean whether it's 200, 300 is any better. I think it's more important, give me green space. Give me a usable green space that, one of those buildings is my building, my project. But the corner lot, 7,000 square feet, has been 7,000 for a park. That be open to the public, to the neighborhood. The neighborhood were very in favor of it, not a 20-foot strip.
Okay, but there is no issue between 200 and 300. And we can't control the architecture. If he wants to build a slab, he's going to build a slab, and that's up to our architectural board to thumbs up or thumbs down. We've got no control over that, how it's going to look, okay? But we do have control over whether we're voting yes for 300 or 200. And the question, I'll just like Chip said, what is the issue? Is there an issue? Is there a legal issue 300 to 200?
Yes.
300 to 200, there's an issue. What's the issue?
The issue is, right now, there is no regulation on what your frontage is. So now you're going to consider a regulation.
And the 300 is a regulation, right?
Let him finish.
So when you're thinking about the current zoning regulation or restrictions, there are no restrictions. And then you're placing a restriction, it's kind of like a continuum as far as your risk. As you move from one direction, you increase the risk.
What if we suggested a 120-day moratorium to give the city an opportunity to study the issue?
Hasn't the city studied the issue already?
No, how many lots are over 200 feet? How many ownerships are over 200 feet? How many over 300? I only saw 4 over 300. I didn't see a 200.
Right, so I don't have a map that shows over 300. I'm sorry, over
saw the
200.
300.
Right.
There
And I
were
only have
4, and I think 1 or 2 of them have already been developed.
2 of them are already
44
approved.
Zamora. Okay.
Right.
How many are over 200?
I have not had that information right now.
Yeah.
I'd have to look at that.
Huh?
I have to look at that. But I think there's also the legal concern of, if we do find that, is that going to be an issue?
We're in an area that's new to the law, and it's hard to predict. I think the more restrictive you are, the more risk you undertake.
And I think
And I'm not saying that 200 is going to be a problem. I'm saying when you look at putting in a regulation that has not previously existed, the more restrictive you are, the more risk you undertake.
you could limit those risks if you moving forward. You cannot do it.
Well, I think that it's an interesting, if there's a way to be able to determine what's been assembled and what's not been assembled, if that's based upon, I presume somebody has filed a deed, or I don't know how they assemble the property, whether they've replatted the property to do that size, or what instrument reflects this ownership. And that may require a look by staff to say, okay, has this assemblage occurred or has it not occurred? But obviously making it something going forward is better than applying it retroactively.
Look, the last thing I would ever want to do, living through 2 or 3 city, 90 Edgewater Drive, lived through that, okay? And I know that city really was fortunate to come out with the millions they spent instead of 3 or 4 times that much. But I mean, and I don't know if unity of title would come into play, but I would think if we require unity of title during lot assemblage, I don't know if we can work in that direction. But all I'm saying is, if we are going to make a decision based today on what the city's liability is, then we really need to know what the city's liability is. That's my only point. That's my only point. So if we have to take a deep breath and hit the pause button and use, and I don't think I've ever voted for a moratorium, but if we have to use a moratorium to kind of pump the brakes a little bit to see what our liability might be in that area, or even the area south of us or east of us or whatever, I mean, I think it's prudent.
Why a moratorium? Like, why use?
To buy some time.
No.
If that's not the way to do it, then whatever tool we have. I mean, listen, I'll vote for the 300 feet right now to slow this thing. I'll vote for the 200 feet. But if the 200 feet is going to cause a bigger issue, and obviously someone picked 300 feet, because hopefully someone looked at 300 feet and saw that the city didn't have any liability, I pray, then that's probably why the 300 foot was proposed. But if we can go to 200 feet, did anybody even look at 200 feet?
But with 200 feet, then you only have to mass 4 lots.
Okay.
Which is the minimum requirement.
Which is a minimum requirement.
Which is
That's very
20,000
tight.
20,000 feet.
Robert, what was the size of your building, the one you did?
There's a beauty in that parallel. And I count about 10 properties there that are,
Yes,
Right now.
there's more than 4. There's
about 10. I counted them off the screen.
Robert, what was the length of the building you said that you donated a park?
The building was like 450 feet, but it was in like 2 towers. The podium, look, the podium was, and this is an old picture. This is not the final one. It read like 2 buildings, and the center was stepped back like 30 feet to create a break. This is what's allowed. This is what's allowed. So, whether it was Robert Behar or Javier Saman or anybody else or Felix Pardo, this is what you allowed to do there today. It doesn't matter how do we, and I'm perfectly fine limiting going forward, moving forward. But I would hate to see the city be in a predicament that today this is what's allowed to do, and then all of a sudden, a moratorium, I don't think it's the way to go. Now, let me ask the city attorney something else. If we put out something that says, okay, whoever, this is not retroactive, but moving forward, you'll have 2 years, 3 years to submit an application. If not, then you lose and it goes back. I mean, something that if somebody has it, you give him time. Because what happened in Miami 21, it was passed in the worst time that at least in my profession we've seen between 2008 and 2010. The economy was nothing, okay? And that's where it passed. You did not get the opposition because
no one was doing anything.
Nobody cared.
Nobody could do anything. Okay? This is different times. So I think maybe there's a possibility where you say, okay, this will go into effect if your property, if you have assemblage in excess of the 6th lot prior to, what did you say, 2023, or moving forward for that, you got 36 months to submit an application. Something that you're not putting the gun to the head, but you eventually take it away.
I agree with Robert, Mr. Chairman, but getting back to the 300 feet, the length of the typical block is 600 feet, right?
It varies between 450 to 600.
Yeah, I read the example you had there. I added it up. It was 600 feet.
450 to 630.
Right where the 30 is, it says 600 feet there.
Right, so that's
Okay.
yeah.
So if that's 600 feet, why not make it, that it would be up to 300 feet, but you must donate a 50-foot park.
Well, I don't know if I would set a 50-foot park, to me. I'm not an architect. I wouldn't want to limit the park, but whatever they do, the project has to come before us. And they have to bring that park or that property. It's up to the board to give a recommendation. Remember, it's up to the commission to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion, if you don't mind, to approve what we have before us here tonight, and then separately, I would like to have the board then make a motion separately to instruct staff to bring up to the commission our concerns that were voiced tonight.
But is your motion to do it, retroactive, everything that is,
Right now, what we have before us is a limitation, which there are no limitations now, as the city attorney said. So what I'm saying is adopting what staff has recommended now, because, what do we have to lose right now?
you have a lot to lose.
A lot. Burt Harris Act.
Yeah, you do. I mean, I would, a motion that with the caveat that property that is excess of the 300 feet be exempted, prior, assembled prior to a certain date, be exempted. I'm okay with that. But if you do that today, Felix, you're gonna put the city, you're taking development right away.
Well, so what your amendment would be that the ordinance would only apply to, or would not, would not apply to properties that were assembled prior to the effective date of the ordinance.
Wait, excuse me, not assembled. Owned and assembled.
Owned.
There's a big difference with a contract compared to I own it.
I agree with you.
Owned.
Owned.
Of course, the ownership could be in multiple names and multiple corporations and,
Which usually are.
Right. So what you're saying is that the ordinance would not apply to properties which have been owned and assembled prior to the effective date of the ordinance.
But what about the unity of title? And the other thing is, when you're looking at ownership, and then you create the unity of title, are you allowed to create a unity of title with separate corporations?
Yeah.
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Yes, you are.
So it would.
But I don't know if whether you have a unity of title or you don't have a unity of title at that particular time is necessarily determinative of the assemblage. They may have a unity of title and may have felt, well, we don't need it at this point. We're not building on the property yet. So
I would just say contiguous. And forget about the ownership and who owns it. It's just contiguous lots over 300 feet in total.
Well,
But I think ownership is key because
Contiguous ownership, there you go.
continuous ownership, because continuous ownership, it could be under different entities, but it has to be one. Look, for the most part, you're not gonna have, two owners let's get together and let's put the properties. That doesn't happen. It's more rare. Typically, if one owner has 6 lots, 7, 8 lots, 10 lots, those are the ones that I am more concerned about.
and let me just say one other thing. I don't really know, because now we're getting into dirt lawyers, which is different than a zoning lawyer, how easy it is to be able to figure out these assemblages and whether staff is able to be able to determine it. Maybe they are able to determine who's assembled the properties and who hasn't.
The only way you could do that, and it's
You
not
have to
like
do a title search,
well,
really.
that, or it typically, even if you go simply at Miami-Dade property appraisal and you look for ownership, typically it takes you back even where they have common addresses and all. to, so you could do it. I mean, it's a lot of work. It's something that to do it citywide, you need a department to do that.
Fortunately, it's not going to be citywide. It's in this RIR.
This area.
And Jennifer, did you do that for the 300? You've already checked? That's why you came up with 300?
Yes,
or
correct.
You already checked that, right? Was that hard to do?
Well, I asked our GIS department to pull up the common ownership
Yes.
of the area.
Yes.
And that's how I came up with that map, yes.
Okay, so you already did that for 300.
For 300.
Okay,
yes.
so you could do that for 200.
Well, Felix, we have a motion that you made.
It didn't have a second.
I understand because we were under discussion.
Right.
So the question was, with his motion, how did we incorporate
Well, you
the
can have
date?
you can have a second with a friendly amendment. See if
Understood, but
if the
how do we-
movement is willing. the
No, but
movement
what
is
I'm
willing.
saying is, how do you add that date to that motion? How do you,
Well, the person who seconds can request a friendly amendment. If the movement agrees with the friendly amendment, if not, then we don't have a second.
no, I understand, but what I'm saying is, how do you implement the date that it starts?
Well, you would, in the effective date of the ordinance, you would
Or
include
the
a,
effective
you would include a provision is, it is provided, this shall be effective as of the date of adoption. It is provided, however, that this ordinance shall not apply to properties that have been assembled and own, or whatever the
Understood.
the devil might be in the details a little bit, but I'm just kind of trying to
Yeah, but
craft something, assembled and owned prior to the effective date of this ordinance. That's how it would appear in the
I
ordinance.
would do it in the future, within 6 months of the effective date of the ordinance, to take effect 6 months after passage of the ordinance.
Well, the only problem with doing
Oh,
that
because you
is
give people
then everybody
opportunity.
starts running to the
Yeah,
courthouse.
yeah.
Let's do it. Is there,
claim deed.
is there a second that would make a friendly amendment to Felix's?
Well, there wasn't a second. because-
Well, no, that's what I'm asking now, if there is.
I will make a second
Right.
with the condition,
What he
those
said.
conditions, okay? The property that is owned and assembled be exempted prior to the effective date. And there was something else that I wanted to add to that.
park.
Oh, well, no. And how about if those owners or those are not exempted in perpetuity? They have a time limitation to submit an application. Do we want to say that, because the way we're doing it,
That's a two-step. Yeah, you can do that.
because the way we're doing it, I could own that property and and wait 20 years and still get the same benefit, right?
So within,
That's true.
within what period would you say, 24 months?
No, I think 36 months will be a time frame.
Yeah.
Because that way, moving forward in 3 years, if you did not apply, sorry, you lose it.
But at least you know this is the ordinance.
I just to say, the more cautious you are with existing property rights, the better off you
The
are.
most conscious is putting property be exempted.
Yeah, I'm
not
not,
put a
I
future.
can't, there's no cases on this. There, when you look at the case law, there's no cases on
So,
this.
Robert, to move,
Felix,
to move
my-
it forward, 36 months is what you're proposing?
Is that, are we potentially gonna create a problem?
I always say that anybody can sue for anything at any time.
How about if the step one is do not put a time limit for the future, just property that were owned and assembled prior to the effective date be exempted. That way we limit anybody going forward.
Correct.
Are you okay with that?
I agree, yes.
So we have a motion, he has agreed. Any other discussion?
I have a discussion. Sorry. So I don't know how architects and builders make money. I just know that it's by scaling as much as they can, I'm assuming, taking as large a piece of property and building as much as they can on it and renting it out or selling it. And there's nothing wrong with that. So is there a difference between having a 300-foot piece of property versus 250-foot pieces of property or a 350-foot piece of property with a 50-foot lot in the middle of it. I mean, I'm just trying to get away from that Las Vegas hotel look in North Gables. I'm trying to get away from what the, the on Pont Circle when you drive by just one huge massive. I wouldn't mind 250-foot buildings if there was space in between. So if someone assembled 350 feet and built 150 feet here and 150 feet here with 50 feet in the middle, do you still make your money?
Keep in mind that you have setbacks.
I understand.
So you're not, the 300 feet is not 300 feet.
290.
No, less, because you got at least 10 and 10.
Well, I'm assuming it's
right?
going to be a pad, and I'm assuming the city's going to say, well, you give us this 50-feet park in the middle, we're going to relieve some of the setback. I'm assuming that's the kind of horse trading that's going to take place, because that's normally what takes place.
But it also has to come back before.
I understand
It
that.
has to go through all the processes.
In the massing, in your project, Robert, in the massing of the two buildings, was that something that was suggested by the Board
Oh,
of
yeah,
Architects?
yeah.
So
We
then
went
again, the Board of Architects has it.
We went through
He's got your back.
hell and back for
Any other
And just to clarify, it had to be a pad, it had to be 1 acre to be able to have that horse and trade situation.
Yeah, 43,000
Otherwise, they have to
square
meet
feet.
the setbacks. Yeah.
Well, with 350 feet, you'll have more than 43,000.
No, you don't.
No, you're
Because it's
30,000.
110 by 350.
Oh, it's not
You're-
150?
You're not even get to the pad, so you could even take the benefits of the PAD.
Right, the PAD is
All right, any other
block almost.
discussion? No, call the roll, please.
Sue Kavalinsky,
No.
Felix Pardo,
Yes.
Javier Salman,
Yes.
Chip Withers,
Yes.
Robert Behar,
Yes.
Julio Gabriel,
Yes.
A.B. Eisenstadt.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
We've been going now for 2.5 hours. We haven't given the court reporter a 5-minute break. We typically take a 5-minute break. I recognize you have 2 items left on your agenda that may have some extensive comments, so.
We could take the break and but
9
tonight,
o'clock.
it's a 9 o'clock stop. Because I don't want to go at
Is there
10
a-
o'clock we did last time.
Jennifer, is there a must-pass item in here? I shouldn't say must-pass, must-be-addressed item in here
The
that
TV
the,
thing shouldn't take more than 10 minutes, should it?
I hope not.
And the grass.
I don't
should
see
not
either
take-
one of them have taken long.
Yeah, they were easy.
Well, that should take
okay,
5 hours. Do we need to take a break? The court reporter says she's good. Does any board member here want to take a break?
No.
Let's
We
go,
can
let's
go.
continue.
Hey, I just have one, I apologize.
I may walk out, but that's okay.
We don't need you. We got 4 architects.
Let's see if we could truly do these 2 items in 10 minutes.
But I want to revisit that last item just a second. I really would like to figure out a way to try to revisit that 200-foot deal. I really would. So whether if we make a motion to the commission, then they have to accept our motion and act on it, from what I understand. So if it takes a motion to the commission.
Well, wait a minute. Let's clarify that. You've made a recommendation. On your transcript is seen by the commission. They've seen the comments about preference for potentially 200 feet. So they're aware of it.
I always thought, and I could be totally wrong because I am a lot of times, that if a board made a specific motion of action to the commission, they had to act on it. Is that not correct?
Not correct. You're merely making a
Totally wrong.
recommendation.
We're just a recommending board.
Okay, I'm wrong. I apologize for your time.
You've had that other hat for a long time.
But I would like to emphasize that to the commission to look at it.
It's been noted.
Now we have 7 minutes.
Thank you.
Wait, I go.
Next item, please.
I'll move it.
Second.
I have to read it first.
Can I make up for everything, guys?
I have to read it first.
Can I make up for it?
Item E3, an ordinance of the City Commission providing for text amendments to the City of Coral Gables Official Zoning Code, Article 6 Landscape, by amending the utilization of artificial turf on open joints of pavement, and Article 10 Parking and Access by providing review of materials and pavement joints and providing for repeal provision, severability clause, codification, and providing for an effective date. Item E3, public hearing.
Motion to approve.
Well, let's, first of all, I think we need to let the record reflect there's no one in the room to speak on this item. Do we have anybody in the,
Well, should we do the presentation by staff? Are we required?
well,
It's very simple. We're
I wasn't
taking out-
sure, I wasn't sure where you're going with this, so I want to make sure that we have on the
I'd like
record
to-
that nobody's speaking on this.
No, I'd like to go just, even if it's a quick process. Jennifer, is there
So there's
anything?
2 points to this. One, we're removing the option to have artificial turf within the pavement joints. I don't need a PowerPoint, thank you. And then the second point is to add alternatives as far as what to put in between those pavements.
So those alternatives are guided. You must do A, B, C, or D.
River rock, Jersey Shore gravel, marble chips, such. These are consistent with what's allowed as far as the swale package goes, which is if we adjacent to these driveways.
I hate the swale packages.
And this is only in the front yard.
Yes, driveways.
Okay, that's your presentation? for
Yes.
now? Okay. Do we have anybody for any comment, whether it's Zoom, phone, or in chambers?
No
Chambers
one.
is nobody.
No.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. Sue?
You know, we're limiting residents' ability to do things. Again, not developers, we're limiting residents' abilities to do things. So I'm totally against this. If they want artificial, I mean, if we're discussing joints in a driveway, don't we have better things to discuss? Let them have artificial turf. It's not displeasing. Let them have it. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Sue. Chip?
I thought we gave them options to do stuff.
We are. The only thing that they cannot do is artificial turf, according
In
to
the
this.
front yard,
In the front yard.
Right.
Correct.
for the driveway.
And just the joints, right?
Right.
We're talking about joints in a driveway.
Yes.
Well, they really
You already
can't have
can't do-
artificial turf at all in the
You
front
can't do artificial turf at all.
Currently, you can have it in the joints, and that's it.
Right.
And why are we taking this right away from the residents?
We don't like the look of it.
Just because you don't like it?
It's not,
Are there complaints of
it-
anybody that's loose or comes loose? Because I've seen it everywhere. It look bad to
No,
me.
I guess it's not wearing very well in the location as far as like heavy traffic with people driving into the driveway a lot. It's not aging very well.
I think part of the problem is people try to use it in bigger areas. I think if you're better off if you limit it to like 3 or 4 inches maximum.
4 inches is.
And the problem is people doing it on the
the
separation,
sides,
and then they're gonna continue it. And then it becomes, where is the cutoff point?
and then you have the wear and tear of the tire turning on the thing, and it destroys it.
All right, let's,
So what's being used as an alternative are more natural materials that will allow for that percolation. You don't really get with turf as much.
Chip, did you have any?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Felix? Oh. Javier?
Can you answer my question?
No problem.
Julio? Any comments, Robert? I had a comment which I wanted to ask. Has anybody ever presented to the Board of Architects or anything to do some kind of lighting in those strips? Does anything like that exist?
The lighting?
Yeah, let's say you want to go ahead and do a low.
Disco lighting?
No, hold on. Let's say you want to do a very low tone path type lighting that goes in there. Has anybody ever presented that or anybody ever looked at? Does that exist?
It does exist. In walkways, I think.
In walkways?
Pavers
I'm not
that
talking
are
about bright
illuminated.
lights. I'm looking about a very subtle.
That's a whole different Pandora
Okay,
box.
okay.
I
I'm just-
advise
I'm
the
asking
chair
that
to
question.
stick the comments directly to the item before it.
I'm just asking if that would be something, and like I said, I'm not talking about bright lights, just to clarify. I'm just talking about.
Look, I don't have, and Sue, I don't have a problem. If you keep it, don't keep it. I personally don't like it, but doesn't mean that we're gonna take it away from people's ability to do it. I just said it just to move over there forward, but,
So you're a no.
Any other discussion? Is there a motion anybody would like to make?
I'd like to make a motion to disapprove the artificial turf, and I think it should be left up to the Board of Architects on determining the width of the
And
strips.
and as a question, would you go to a size limit? As
No
Javier
more,
had said,
no
4
no
inches?
more than 2 inches.
2
Board of
inches?
Architects.
Well,
To be
Board
determined.
of Architects.
let the Board of
decide.
Architects decide.
Okay.
I would
that's fine.
second that.
So we have to disapprove by Felix, and we have a second by Sue to not approve,
Excuse
To
me, so the
decline.
motion is to deny.
to deny.
To deny the limitation.
Where does this come from? What, how, I mean, just to the
It's coming
point.
from a member of the commission. The sponsored text amendment.
Yeah, there's nothing better to do, right?
So we have a motion to deny, we have a second. Any discussion? No? Call the roll, please.
Felix Pardo,
Yes.
Javier Salman,
Yes to deny.
Chip Withers,
No.
Robert Behar,
Tick, tock, tick.
No.
Julio Gabriel.
I just want to clarify, if I vote yes, means that we continue
That means you're denying.
To,
Deny.
deny that.
to be able to use artificial turf.
Yes.
Sue Kowalinsky,
Yes.
Avi Eisenstadt,
No.
To use grass,
Grass or artificial grass?
artificial grass, I'm sorry.
So what do we have?
4-3, motion to deny was approved, passed.
Okay. Item E4, an ordinance of the City Commission providing for text amendments to the City of Coral Gables official zoning code, Article 2, zoning district, Section 2-403, Giralda Plaza District overlay by allowing a television screen on the inside of a window on the pedestrian street of Giralda Plaza, providing for severability clause, repealer provision, codification, providing for an effective date. Item E4, public hearing. I just have one question on this, Jennifer. As I understand it, this is only permitted if you have outdoor dining,
Correct.
correct?
Yes.
Okay, we may need to
Oh,
play
for
with the title
okay,
a little
that's
bit.
fine.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So for the record, Jennifer Garcia, city planner. So the pedestrian street of Giralda, as you know, is the 100 block of Giralda. There's no cars allowed, it's just pedestrian. There's a lot of outdoor seating, a lot of sidewalk cafes that are taking advantage of this area. An idea of how to encourage that pedestrian activity in that part of the city more is to allow TV screens be facing the already allowed sidewalk cafe as approved. I think it's worded as open air dining. The screen will be limited to the width of the window, so they can't be a large screen that's expanding beyond the width of the window. It needs to fit with the window, and it cannot occupy more than 50% of the entire window size. I think that pretty much sums it up. Oh, and it's limited to one screen per 25 street of frontage. So you can't have screen. It has to be within 25 feet of each other, or as approved by the development review official for some flexibility.
And this TV is going to be inside
Yes, inside
space
facing out towards
the
the,
window.
correct.
So
What about the
it's,
sound?
I'm sorry?
What about the sound?
The sound would have to follow the sound ordinance, a different part of the section. But they could have sound during certain hours.
If you're watching a baseball game while you're having dinner outside.
outside.
That's
That's
what it-
the intent of this soccer
Yes.
game. There's a sports bar there to have a TV that people outside can see.
They just follow.
Just a question, is there anything in the code about any kind of active displays? So this would be an active display. Is there anything in the code against VMS signs, variable message signs, tickers?
Well, this wouldn't be a sign. This would be a TV screen playing live, well, I guess.
I mean, what you're
Right,
saying
but
is-
in general,
What
in the
Sue is
code.
saying is to.
No advertising.
No advertising, or we're open. Big TV says open.
So from my understanding, I'm looking at legal, we can't limit as far as what they're
Well,
showing on the screen.
I think I thought they had said a live, what do we have in the ordinance? I haven't seen the latest revision. Did it have live action or what?
We couldn't limit it to that only live sports events.
Well, what I'm saying, if you have an active display, if that's considered an
I think
active
there are
display.
restrictions on signage.
Yeah.
For general restrictions on signage. So that would be inconsistent with the sign regulations. I think I believe this was, the intent was for display of live action.
That's the intent, but we can't limit it to only,
Can
that
you
material.
can you prohibit advertisement?
Well, I think there's already a regulation on, obviously, when somebody's watching a baseball game and there's a commercial, there's going to be an advertisement.
that's part of
But
the programming,
I think that the television, there are point-of-sale sign regulations, and so that would potentially conflict with that if the television wasn't being used for the purpose of live action, but they were going to say so-and-so's cafe on the TV, and then that would be construed to, would have to meet the point-of-sale sign restrictions of the property.
And I'm not
You do have
against
to be
this, by the way. I
careful
just wanna
about
know what the code is.
content-based. You do have to be careful.
I mean, I'm
about
not
content.
against this, I just want to know what the code is. I mean, can I put a variable message sign on the inside, and it's saying exactly that? Tuesday night, free wings.
But that I think that would be going into the advertisement.
That would go into the sign regulation
Even
of
though it's an
the,
active display. You know, there's flashy, girls,
Or guys.
guys.
Guys selling beer.
You know what I mean?
I used to work at Hooters.
Jennifer, let me
Anyway.
ask you a question. If somebody takes that TV and moves it 4 feet back from the window, but yet you can see that TV from the window. Let's say I have a restaurant, and I put that television 4 foot back from the window, but I aim it towards the window. Am I allowed to do that?
I think as long as you're not attached to the window, it wouldn't be considered blocking the window. Right now, you can't do that because you're blocking the window.
Right.
You're not allowed to block the window. But I think if you're 4 feet away, you could probably argue that you're not attached to the window and placing it, so you could
Or
probably do
even
it.
a foot away?
Right.
Then I'm not attached. So why wouldn't somebody that's doing it just, if code enforcement comes up to somebody and says, you can't do this, why wouldn't they just move it 6 inches away or a foot away and
I'm
not
assuming
attached?
the space, the interior space, may not have enough space to move
Okay.
it back
All
4
right.
feet.
I'm just asking a question. I don't mean to open a Pandora's box.
So that big TV on the corner of Giralda and Ponce in that sports bar, is that allowed where that is? That's on the wall.
Currently, no, it's not allowed because it's blocking the window.
Have they been cited?
I believe so.
But it's, if it was on the back wall over the bar and it was looking.
It's fine, right?
It'd be fine.
You just can't block the window.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion, if you don't mind, and we
Well,
could
let-
keep discussing if you'd
If I
like.
can, I just want to find out, do we have any speakers for this item?
No, no speakers.
No speakers whatsoever on any platform? Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to approve this change. I
As
think,
presented?
as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second. Any discussion?
I just want to add one thing. There was a lot of money that was spent on Giralda for those people to survive there. This is just something that makes sense. And most of the glass, by the way, Mr. Chairman, most of the glass nowadays is tinted for energy. And the further back you set it, you can't see anything.
And the mullions are 48 inches, and it's a contiguous glass that we have to have.
We
That's a
have a
limitation.
motion and we have a second. Robert seconded. Any further discussion? No? Call the roll, please.
Javier Salman,
Yes.
Chip Withers,
Yep.
Robert Behar,
Yes.
Julio Gabriel,
Yes.
Sue Kowalensky,
Yes.
Felix Pardo,
Yes.
A.B. Eisenstat.
Yes. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to
A
adjourn.
second.
We have a second by
foot race.
Javier. Everybody in favor? Aye?
Aye. And
Thank you for your time,
we
everybody.
finish in 12 minutes.
See, I think you should.